All right, that was wild. Dude, that was insane. So, my internet is fine. It doesn't show a single drop frame on OBS. Twitch just decided, nah, you know what? We don't think you should be streaming now. How am I supposed to skip off work? Dude, we're back. Hopefully, Twitch doesn't do any more degenerate bullshit. Although, I won't bank on it. It seems like Twitch loves their degenerate bullshit. I don't know about you guys, but it really does feel like Twitch is just getting worse and worse, man. It doesn't feel like Twitch is getting better. Wait, when did I skip? Oh, shit. I don't remember. Gonna have to check now. So I want this one at 6 p.m. Probably move the other one to 7 p.m. then. I want this one first. We do as well. That's why we're here. Grofile, how you doing, bro? Okay, so this one is scheduled for 7 p.m. Okay, that's good. 11th, 7 p.m., 6 p.m. All right, that's it. We've got tonight's videos scheduled already. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Oh. All right, yeah, we are back. I don't know what Twitch's problem is. I don't know if Twitch is going to have more problems throughout the day. The chances are good, chat, that Twitch will have more problems throughout the day. So if we go by hot, right, which is slowly falling apart, you have no idea. If we go by hot, then the Cursed Founding, we have every Hive Fleet, we have Pro Painter Reviews, Golden Demon, Major Kills video on Rylanor is great. The Emperor is incompetent or evil. The first episode of Og the Ogren by Noman, fan story. By the way, gonna have QA live next week. Have a bunch of questions lined up. East Village Q&A is today at 3 p.m. Like legit, we're gonna be live on Twitch. So Q&A is on Twitch now. Because I don't see the point of jumping between fucking Twitch and YouTube for that shit. So we're live now. We're going to be reacting to stuff. And then at 3 p.m., my time, 3 p.m., we do Q&A. I don't know what the fuck time 3 p.m. is for you guys, though. So, you know, wherever you are in the world, just search 3 p.m. South African Standard Time in my time zone. And that'll tell you. High Fleets, something else than the freaking Imperium of Chaos. Grofile, shut the fuck up, you dirty Tau bastard. Hey, I will take that from literally anyone else, but not from a Tau-loving asshole. Hey, you can just shut the fuck up, all right? We're not watching Tau videos, and whenever you ask, we watch more Emperor videos. Have you watched any Baltimore vids yet? He says they're a battle, and Night Lord's vids are really good. I don't think I've heard Baltimore quite a few times. Like a lot of people have fucking spoken about Baltimore, but I've not seen his videos suggested even once. So the only person within the Warhammer universe whose videos I've watched that isn't like fan-made sort of animation series is Luton and Major Kill. Oh, and Bricky. Those are the only ones that I've watched. Some people have told me about Voldemort. I've heard quite a lot about. Then there's another guy that some people like, some people fucking hate. I don't know his name, but there's people that don't want me to watch his videos. There's people that want me to watch his videos. I don't know. If the videos are interesting, I'll probably fucking watch them. I don't give a shit. Arch. Yeah, that's the one. Yes, Arch. Audible chocolate. All right, so you guys want me to watch some Voldemort videos. Okay, but am I correct in saying that Luton is like the ultimate Warhammer content creator? He's like the library of Warhammer content. If you want like proper deep dive fucking heavy in-depth videos about Warhammer, you go to Luton. Domicil's Crusade was put on your Reddit. That's from Baltimore. I don't watch him as much as most people, so I can't say. In terms of detail, yes, Baltimore is close in detail, to be honest, but he does great stories at the start. He's one of the top ones, yes. Haves the novel or Necrit of the Warhammer YouTube space. Ah, okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. So Voldemort, where does Voldemort land? If you have Luton on like the extreme side of like 45-minute to an hour videos, just jam-packed with lore, and you have Major Kill on the other side with like 10-minute videos, more funny kind of videos, and you have Bricky somewhere in the middle, you know, doing longer form videos, but also trying to keep it very fun sort of thing. He's closer to Luton than Major Kill. Okay. So he's sort of like in that middle, but same as Bricky. Slightly shorter than Luton, with a serious tone, but a nice narration at the start. Luton is general information, Baltimore is more story-like information, and Wolflord Row for the more speculatory videos with information mixed in. I think Baltimore is kind of mid-length and storytelling with a really great voice. Dude, I've tried with my newest video. I've tried to do like a little bit of storytelling at the beginning as well. And I didn't plan on it. It just sort of worked out that way. Because the video is about the Void Lords and more specifically the enemies of the Void Lords. So I sort of started with a kind of story at the beginning. I did put Voldemort vid on last week about the cybernetic revolt. Dude, I don't see it here. You guys have to upvote this shit. Like, just upvote. Just go on to Reddit and upvote your favorite videos. This is how you ensure we watch the ones that you want to watch. If you don't upvote, like if we have a lot of these videos with like 0 fucking upvotes on them, how do I know this is what you guys want to watch? I don't. That's the answer. I have no fucking idea. Tau bias. Oh, right. Wait, it's a video about Tau? Yeah, no one cares about that, bro. Stuff like Gleeman Rust, tanks, and chimeras, and Baneblades are fun as fuck. Dude, watch me giving the Tau shit, right? And then learning about the Tau and falling in love with him. That would be such a kick in the nuts. This is a battle in Night Lord stories. Set them up so you know what they're about. He makes them up himself too. Oh. Wait, so he starts his videos with a completely made-up story. I the crab, you motherfucker. Tier 1, 7 months, part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you. There's videos of the Guard versus Tau, by the way. The Rust and Chimera and Baneblade stuff. Never watch a Tau vid ever again. Adorable Prince has a god-tier voice with a story focus, but less known, though. Yeah, that's the fucking problem, right? When you just start out with something. Like, I'm working on my own script for a Warhammer video. Obviously focused around the Plague Wars. Because those are the first books that I could get my hands on. So those are the books that I'm reading. And I'm going to do sort of like a book review. Kind of book review sort of thing. But, you know, discussing the various sort of implementations. My first video is actually about my favorite part of the entire book, which is the Guardsman. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. But the Guardsman story is literally actually my favorite thing in the entire Plague War. And it wasn't. When I first started reading Plague War, it was all about the Primarch, right? I was all about Rabute Gilliman. And then, sort of second chapter, dealing with Varys, I fell in love with it. Because these are normal people, right? They have no special abilities, no special armors, no special fucking weapons, nothing special about them. They live in absolute suffering. And yet, they never quit. They just keep fucking going, bro. They stand their ground, and they will just keep fucking going no matter what. Gilliman too, he's great. I do like Gilliman. I just really appreciate what the Guardsmen stand for. Because they don't. I mean, there's one scene in Plague War the first Dark Imperium book, where they describe Varys and the other guardsmen are in the trench, right? On what the fuck is that planet called again? Dude, I can't remember the planet's name. But they're inside this trench and they're shooting the zombies, and they've got a bunch of new recruits that don't quite understand what to do and, you know, how to do it, kind of thing. And then as soon as they clear out all of the undead, they're like, okay, this is it, right? That's been happening the whole fucking time. Like every few hours, Nurgle sends like a giant shitstorm of undead. And then suddenly they start hearing these footsteps coming out of the mist, and the mist grows fucking thicker, and the flies come and attack them, and they just hear these voices all chant in unison. All is ash. All is ash. All is ash. And you know, like Varys realizes the sound he's hearing as they're walking. It's fallen space marines. It's traitor legions. It's specifically, I think, is it called the Death Guard? I want to say it's called the Death Guard, but I might be wrong. He said something about, he called them something. Nixty, thank you so much for staying on sub. 14 months, part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, okay, so yeah, it is the Death Guard. And the way they describe it in the books, the horror that these guardsmen... Now, again, remember, you have space marines that now also have the blessings of Nurgle, right? Their weapons are overpowered. Their armors are overpowered. These guardsmen have a mask on, and they have a las gun. That's it. They are not equipped for this fight. It's like bringing a knife to a fucking gunfight, right? And yet, they stand their ground and they just start fucking shooting. And they take down the Death Guard. They actually manage to kill the Death Guard. Which is, I mean, fuck. You know, that is awesome. That is just, you read that, and as you're reading it, your inside is going, yeah, fucking yeah, get him, you bastards. It's so well written, dude. Those books are so fucking good. I see Cyberpunk on Steam. Has Echo watched Edge Runners? I have like 2 episodes left of Edge Runners. Then I would have watched the whole of it. I love it. But I sort of started rewatching Witcher. So I'll first have to finish The Witcher Season 2. I'm in episode 2 of Season 2. And then I'll go back to Edge Runners. Flashlight to a gunfight. Las guns are extremely strong. Scott Burke, they're extremely strong, but against Space Marine armor and Space Marine guns, is there any fucking comparison really? Talking about Dark Imperium? Over, yes. Talking about the Dark Imperium. Bolter series? I want to read everything. Have you seen The Ring of Power on Amazon Prime? Thoughts? I watched like half an hour of the first episode, and then I just showed myself out. If you're gonna call something Lord of the Rings, I expect it to be Lord of the Rings, and I expect it to stick to the lore of Lord of the Rings. If you want to make a fan fiction set in the universe of Lord of the Rings, by all means, you know, have at it. But then don't use any of the established characters. Don't change the characters to a point where that's not what they did. That's not part of the story. That's bullshit. You're changing a masterpiece. There's a reason why Lord of the Rings have lasted as long as it has. So yeah, I have no interest in watching any more of Rings of Power. Sorry, the story is good enough as it is. You didn't need to do massive rewrites on the lore. Fantasy show ever? It's a dumpster fire. Unfortunately, sure to go into a haunted castle this month. I will be unable to gift. Nixie, that's perfectly fine. Don't worry about it. Wait, what haunted castle are you going to? Lord Knox, you see, that sentence you just said there, that sentence doesn't work for me. Apart from the lore being inaccurate, full stop. Like, that's where that sentence ends, right? There is no apart from, because if the lore is inaccurate, you fucked up the story. Because the lore is everything. Like, if you've ever spent time reading and learning about the lore in Lord of the Rings, it is so deep, so vast, so incredibly perfect, because it leaves questions at the right places. It answers questions at the right places. It's just perfectly balanced. You fuck that up. You no longer have Lord of the Rings. You might have something that's inspired by Lord of the Rings, but you don't have Lord of the Ring. And it kind of annoys me that they took... So I guess I should just... I have always had a slight problem with how the movies for Lord of the Rings played out. Because I think they chose the wrong part of the story to make the movies about. I have always wanted a story about the earlier days. Because I always thought to myself, if you're going to do a movie about Lord of the Rings, start with the earlier stuff. Because that's where the lore really starts. That's where it gets really good. Right? And it sets up all of the other stories. And then they go and they make a video. Butterbeans, by the way, thanks for the prime sub. Really appreciate that. 4 months, part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate ya. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So they go back to earlier lore. Kind of important lore, right? It's literally the creation of all of it. And they fuck it up. They change it. They just go, screw it. We think this will work better. It's like, dude, what the f are you doing? It's super important that this stuff work the way that it fucking goes. Why are you changing good lore? Yeah, so I won't waste my time with that. I might give it a watch when all of it's come out and I'm really bored and I have nothing else to fucking do. I might go back and give it another go. But for now, I just don't want to waste my time. If we could get some Age of the Tree stories, that'd be good stuff. I would say, in a perfect world, I would want to go back even further. In a perfect world, I would want to go back to the even earlier days. So before Sauron fell. Before everything. So at the very creation of the universe, sort of. That's where I would want to go back to. Alzin, I think the reason why it gets so much hate, and it's difficult to... It's always difficult to describe and explain, because most people will absolutely agree with you. It's not just for Rings of Power. It's basically for everything these days. Why did Ghostbusters get the hate that it got? Did Ghostbusters deserve the amount of hate that it got? Not really. It was a terrible film. Don't get me wrong. The actors they chose were completely wrong, unfunny, very bad actors, right? So why did it get so much hate? Because in terms of the story, it was a proper B-roll, and no one gets angry at bad films. No one gets angry when you make a bad movie. It's not like people lose their minds because, oh my god, there's another bad movie. You just don't go watch it. Why did Ghostbusters get the hate that it got? Why does Game of Thrones season 8 get the hate that it got? Why is it the Rings of Power is getting the hate that it got? That it gets? Because you've applied your politics to a classic. to something that have been loved and is loved for what it represents, for what it can be. And due to your ideological polls and your politics, you've ruined it. And that's not to say that something is ruined by, for example, in Ghostbusters, putting Ghouls in there. But you make the entire cast female, and then you also fuck up the script. Like, you don't even write good jokes. You literally don't. You spend no time. You feel like it feels like you thought it was going to make money because it's all Ghouls. Look, we have a brand new Ghostbusters. Just Ghouls. Go watch it. Go enjoy it. You go watch it, you go, dude, this is a horrible fucking script. The jokes don't work. The actors are shit. What the fuck am I watching? You took a classic and you ruined it. I wouldn't mind if you made all the Ghostbusters female, but then make the fucking shit good, right? Write a good script, have good jokes, choose good actors. I mean, I would watch it, because fuck, I like watching Ghouls. They're cute. Why wouldn't I? Right? It's just sort of, and this is the same thing over and over again. You start inserting your politics, and then you think, based on your politics, it should be good. Right? Because, hey, it's a female is playing the lead role, everyone will go watch. As it turns out, that's not why people go watch. People don't watch a male lead because everyone's misogynist. People don't not watch female leads because everyone's misogynist. People don't watch when shit is bad. And it seems like these fucking modern day Hollywood types have not figured that out yet. If you're gonna change a cult classic, you have to be fucking certain that you have a good story on your hands. Like, you have to actually do double the amount of work that you did originally. Because you're already fucking tinkering with the lore here. Right? So now you have to go above and beyond to make sure that that shit is good. And sadly, it's just not what's happening, right? It's just not what's happening. Ethan had a female lead role, and that movie was great. I actually like those actresses in Saturday Night Live, but their type of humor did not translate well to the movie. You know, when a story or universe gets sold to a big corpo, it's automatically already dead. Look at Star Wars, now with Lord of the Rings. Marvel is going down too. DC Universe. True. Too much feminism in movies. Nothing against females, though. Dude, I don't think feminism and females have anything to do with each other these days. I don't even think feminism is feminism anymore. Because I would consider, if you're talking about just equal rights for everyone, I consider myself a feminist. If you talk about modern day bullshit, I don't know what the fuck that is, but it doesn't make much sense to me. Anyways. Fuck it, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to get pissed off, chat. I'm having a wonderful day. I have some tea here. I'm relaxed. I don't want to get angry at Hollywood, because I feel like that is a battle that we'll never win. Just don't get why in Rings of Power cast everyone is focused on their propaganda and no one even talks about the show. Because you've put the propaganda first and foremost, right? You've moved the propaganda to the front lines. Of course, that is what everyone is going to focus on. And not everything should be made for everyone. Scottberg, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I think that's one of the big issues that I have with modern day Hollywood. It's that they're trying to make every movie to include everyone. That is literally the opposite of what art is supposed to be. Right? Because art, by its very nature, is exclusive. What one person will like, another person will hate. And that's just the nature of art. Even the greatest artists of our time, you go to someone like Queen, right? The band Queen, Freddie Mercury. Arguably, one of the greatest singers and bands of our time. There are people that hate Queen. They can't fucking stand their music. They can't stand Freddie Mercury. They don't like his voice. Do not care. That's art. right? That's just how art works. It's by its very nature divisive. So yeah, the push to include everyone in everything, I think it just ends up excluding almost everyone from everything. Because what's funny to me is that why? So Hollywood keeps pushing these like left-wing things, right? They keep pushing very left-wing ideologies. Why is the left not watching the movies and the series then? Freya, how you doing? Because we keep hearing that these things fail because of vote bombs. You know, people are downvoting it, review bombing it. People are boycotting it. That's why they're failing, because of the right wing. But my question is, why is the left not watching it then? If these shows are so good and the only reason they're failing is because of haters downvoting it, then why the fuck on... So, a good example of this was when Ghostbusters failed, right? When Ghostbusters failed, we were told that it's Maine. Maine are the problem. Because Maine review bombed it and refused to go watch it to protect their fragile little egos. My question is then, why the fuck did the women not go watch it? Could it be that women on average don't like Ghostbusters? I mean, that could be it, right? But I mean, that's who you made it for, because you made the entire film with this woman power thing. And it failed. But somehow, it's our fault, even though there's more women on the planet than there are men, and they're roughly 50-50, but it does seem like it's a little bit more women than men. So technically speaking, it should still have gotten a lot of fucking views, right? A lot of people should still have watched it. Freya, why aren't you doing good? Definition of what is hard to tell if they are ignorant or purposely lying. Oh, I think it's a case of I don't think I think it's ignorance, but I think it's more malicious than ignorance, because I do think they genuinely believe that it is just misogynistic men that is review bombing these things and canceling these shows. Another great example was Resident Evil. You guys know the recent Netflix series, Resident Evil? They again blamed review bombing, and also, I think, racists and misogynists were blamed for the show failing. And I remember looking at it, and I thought to myself, where's all the other people then? Like, okay, so I get it. The men and the racists aren't watching, however many people that might be. But then where are all the not racist and not men people? Because surely they must have fucking loved the show, right? Because the show is brilliant. Don't get me wrong. According to the producers, the show is fucking amazing. It's just the men that's the problem. Well, then what about all the not men? And all the not racist people? Why aren't they watching your fucking show? Because surely they would have been enough for the show to get good ratings. But your show got no fucking views. That's why Netflix cancelled it. It's not that, you know, people didn't understand the show and the racists didn't want black people on the screen. Bullshit. Because in the very same fucking vein, one can ask, why did Black Panther get as many views as it fucking got? Black Panther did fucking amazing. And that's a black cast. American Gangster, one of my favorite movies of all time. Pretty sure Denzel Washington is black last time I checked. I watched those films and I really enjoyed those films. I didn't watch Resident Evil. So I don't think it's the racial thing that's the problem here. I think it's the fact that when I started watching Resident Evil, the acting was fucking shit. The series didn't make a whole lot of sense. And after the first episode, I still wasn't quite fucking sure what I was watching. Like, it was definitely not Resident Evil. It didn't feel like a Resident Evil show. So that's why I stopped watching it. Blade is another fucking great film. Also, I'm pretty sure Wesley Snipes is black. Because no matter what people say to support their politics, they still want to be entertained. But the politicking-focused entertainment is not entertaining. True. Denzel was a legend. Can't compare him to nowadays. What do you mean? Oh. No, wait. Are you talking about Denzel Washington? Why the fuck would you say Denzel Washington was a legend? Pretty sure he's still a fucking legend. I like Spawn too. Yeah, no, I think Wesley Snipes is a bit fucking... Like, last time I heard, he was off his rocker a little bit. No, I like Denzel Washington, bro. Look, I don't like Denzel Washington insofar as... I don't know the fucking guy. So, would I be friends with him? I don't know. I don't know him. But insofar as whenever Denzel Washington plays in a film, I watch the film, absolutely. 100%. It doesn't even... I don't even need to know what the movie is about. If I see Denzel Washington is in a film, I go, I'll watch. No problem. I'm there for this. Because he's a fucking brilliant actor. It's like Brad Pitt. I watch almost all of Brad Pitt's movies as well. I obviously watch every single fucking Quentin Tarantino movie. Doesn't matter who the fuck plays in it. Who's the other one that I really love? He's fucking... Johnny Depp is another actor that I just don't... Oh, and then Morgan Freeman, obviously. Who the fuck doesn't watch a Morgan Freeman movie? Trying to think. Is there anyone else? Leonardo DiCaprio probably as well. I'll watch every single film that he's in. Nice, didn't know that. As I understand, the Alien was written with no genders assigned in writing to begin with. What Alien? I don't know what the fuck. What are you guys talking about? What Alien? Brad Pitt. Yeah, I mean, there's some movies that I probably won't watch from Brad Pitt, but most of these films are pretty good. Ah, the Alien movie. I'd say, what was that film called? It was sort of the start of the alien invasion. It was kind of like a prequel, but not quite a prequel. Oh, what was it called again? It's kind of new. Not very new, but kind of new. Prometheus. That's the one. Yes. Dude, now that was fucking good. Prometheus was fucking on fire. That was such a good movie. I haven't watched many Planet of the Apes. I think I've watched one Planet of the Apes. Has there been any new ones, actually? When's the last Planet of the Apes? I can't remember which one I watched. Here we go. 1973. I'm pretty sure I didn't watch one that far back. Here we go. I think I watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I have not watched all of these. What the fuck? Dude, I have some movies to watch. Because I think I watched Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And I did fucking love it. It was really good. So I may have to watch all of these now. Why didn't I keep track of this? That's strange, actually. Grimfield, how you doing, bro? When's the next Star Wars coming? Do anyone know? Not Star Wars, sorry. Star Trek, excuse me. For a potential release date. Yeah, but when, you motherfuckers? Will there be a fourth Star Trek? Bad news, Star Trek 4 has now been indefinitely delayed by Paramount and removed from their slate of upcoming movies. What the? Bro! What the actual fuck? Wait, really? Why would you cancel it? It was so good. Officially announced a fourth Star Trek reboot film with temporary title Star Trek 4. But it is cancelled now. When was this? 28th of September. So it was literally... Wait, here we go. Star Trek 4 potential... Why is this one saying... Okay, wait. For fuck's sake. Yeah, it's fine. Star Trek 4 has hit another huge snag in the way to its debut, despite all the progress it has made. As of September 2022, the movie was indefinitely delayed following the exit of director Matt Shankman, who is now set to direct Fantastic Four to Marvel. What the... You would choose Fantastic Four over Star Trek? What the... This comes after news that it was meant to begin filming by the end of this year, despite Chris Pine telling Dateline in July 2022 that he hadn't heard anything about it. Still, there's reason to be hopeful, as the movie hasn't been cancelled, at least not officially. Taking it all with a pinch of salt, here's what we know and can predict. This is just bullshit though, bro. This is just such bullshit. So, where's this in progress? Jar Jar Binks is a Sith. The upcoming TV series looks good. What's the... Do we have any Trekkies in chat? All right, so my question to you guys, the Trekkies in chat, there's currently a Star Trek called Strange Worlds or something like that. What is that like? Is it a good series to watch, or is it worth a skip? Watching the news, though, it's actually good. Right, I'm gonna have to watch that then. Better than Discovery, in my opinion. I haven't watched Discovery. I've heard some bad things about Discovery. So I'll probably watch the new one. I did, though. I think Chris Pine might be one of the best Captain Kirks so far. Like, I love the cast of the new Star Trek. Like, this is a good fucking cast. I like all of the actors. I think this Spock was just fine, to be honest. I don't know why people get so annoyed with this Spock. Because I think this guy... What's his name again? I can't remember what this guy's name is. But he's also the villain of Heroes. I think he was just fucking fine. It's kind of sad that we're not getting a Star Trek 4, boys. F in chat for Star Trek 4. I was really looking forward to another Star Trek movie. Zachary Quinto. That's the one. Thank you. Yes. That is the one. Definitely the most Trek out of the new shows. The most Trek out. What do you mean, Over? There's no live action movie beside First Contact? Mahama, what do you mean? Wait, you don't think the new Star Trek films were good? How can you not think that? They were so fucking brilliant. I mean, it was phenomenal. It is actually the new Star Trek films is what converted me from a Star Wars fan to a Star Trek fan. It's how I got converted, because I have always been a Star Wars fan, and I've never really cared for Star Trek. I've tried to watch a few episodes of Star Trek in the past from the TV series, and I never fucking liked it. And then I sort of, out of boredom, decided to watch Star Trek the movie, and I fell in love with it. I absolutely fell in love with it. So yeah, for me, I would say the new movies have a very dear place in my heart. What does TGN stand for? Which one have I watched? Hold up. I need to check. Have I watched Next Generation, or which one have I watched? Let's quickly see. Enterprise. I'm currently busy watching Enterprise. I'm on episode 19 of season 1. But as you guys can see, I watch shows very weirdly. Um, an episode or two, or binge a lot? Dude, I'm probably gonna watch like all of it because I'm a really big fan now of Star Trek. I guess when I was younger, I kind of liked the heavy fantasy, you know, the action that Star Wars gave. Because Star Wars really is more of like an action film or like a superhero film almost, right? Whereas if you watch Star Trek, it's more sciencey. It's far more about like political intrigue, philosophical intrigue, sort of very heavily story based. There are episodes in Star Trek Enterprise that just, there's no fighting whatsoever. The entirety of the episode, there's not a single action scene. In fact, most of the action scenes are pretty shit. So you don't really care to see action scenes. You just want to see them talking and fucking exploring space and shit like that. When I first don't have any interest in Warhammer lore, but then out of boredom, I tried watching one lore video, and then you were hooked. Enterprise is weak and plot-wise not so good. TNG is the best, and there is nothing to talk about it, to be honest. Oh. So this is the one that you guys want me to watch, The Next Generation. Oh my god, this one's older than... Wait, which one came first? When did Star Trek Enterprise? 2004. When the fuck did Next Generation come out? 1993. Holy shit. That is old as balls, bro. Yeah, of course I've watched The Big Bang Theory. Who the fuck haven't? I for one, I don't like the fact that so many people take issue with Big Bang Theory. Because a lot of nerds hate Big Bang Theory. Because they feel like the creators are making fun of nerds. And I'm just over here going, yeah, of course they're making fun of nerds. Because they don't know who the fuck we are. And that's fine. It's still a funny fucking show. I have watched the movie Interstellar. Such a good film. Such a good fucking film. Right, speaking of which, fam, speaking of watching things, are you guys ready to watch a bit of Warhammer stuff? Or do you want to wait a bit? TNG takes off after the first Borg episode? What the fuck is Borg? I don't know who the Borg is. Follow them out. Luton, please. No way, man. We do have a Luton video right after the first video. So, we first have the first video, the Halo Stars Explained. So, here's how today is going to go. Boys and girls, here's how today is going to go. We're going to start with the worst place in the galaxy from Major Kill. Right after it, we have the Emperor of Man. Or a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's time to complete this series. So we'll start watching this, and then we'll get into Luton. Because the Luton one, you already know. It's going to be a good 2-hour show. So really looking forward to that. All right. Just get the music turned down.
G'day, guys and gal. When I say the word Halo, what do you think of? Angels? Hell no. We're nerds, not Bible-humping pedos. You would think of the Master Chief, or maybe a big-ass circular super weapon that a bunch of space Bible-humping pedos think is a sacred cock ring. Yeah, it's been a while since I played Halo, so my knowledge of the lore is a bit sketchy. You probably wouldn't think of the horrifying
I have legit never played Halo. Like, not even a single fucking minute have been spent inside a Halo game. This map is so wild to me, by the way. Buddy is ready for Russ and the Allfather.
rim of the galaxy, full of dark matter and unknown Xenos, but in 40k, that is exactly what it is. If it's sounding similar to the Ghoul stars, that's because the Ghoul stars are a section of the Halo stars, but they only make up like 1/4 of it. That means there are around 3 more quarters of horrifying shit. Fortunately, we haven't been exposed to much of it, because whenever people try to explore them, they usually die horribly.
Why?
But not always. You know those Halo devices that turn people into flesh-eating cannibals? They're from the Halo stars, baby. A quick note, you guys and gal are legends. The channel is growing at an obscene rate, and we're poised to take over the arch enemy within a few weeks. So let's dig in and go even harder. If you laugh, smile, learn something new, or you're just keen to play Halo Infinite when it drops, then slap that juicy button. I've got a fun video planned for when we overtake the old mate that is sure to ruffle some feathers. Today we'll talk about the Halo stars and what resides in them. We'll go over the 4 sections of this dark galactic rim before talking about the times that people have tried to penetrate its void. Let's get into it. Halo stars exist in real life as well, with the main difference being that our Halo stars don't contain Lovecraftian monsters capable of destroying civilizations. Or maybe we do, who knows. In 40k, they form a ring around the Milky Way, which is designed to keep things in more than it's designed to keep things out. Flying through the Halo stars isn't a huge deal. It's when you try and explore planets and shit that stuff goes sideways. That's why the Tyranids can fly through most of the Halo star regions in our galaxy without too much drama. Each section of the Halo stars offers its own fun little surprises. We've already covered the Ghoul stars in another video, as this section of the Halo stars is the most well known and explored, and holy shit, it is spooky. Galactic plagues and cosmic hentai looking monsters have known to emerge from here, requiring extreme levels of effort and a lot of heresy on the Imperium's part to contain. The Necrons here are also all flayed ones. The one Tyranid hive fleet that flew through here went insane, and there is an entire chapter of pretty emo looking marines who exist purely to watch over the Ghoul stars for signs of another apocalypse. So naturally, the Black
So this is the Eldritch guys that we were talking about the other day. Like, when I told you guys, why the fuck did you not tell me about the Eldritch? The giant Eldritch horror? Those are the Space Marines. They're in the Ghoul stars, watching for any sort of movement. Interesting. Dude, how is it possible that the Warhammer universe just gets more and more fucking interesting? It's not supposed it can't. I mean, you already have this giant interesting world v world scenario, right? Where everything is just fucked. But the fucked upness of the universe is not enough. It's not enough that you have literal death planets and places that, or Tyranids and orcs and fucking things that can one-shot you. No. It has to also be encircled or encased with a ring that basically kills anything that it comes into contact with. Like, what in the fuck? Who thought of this?
Templars decided to crusade it. These fucking guys, I swear. They actually did a really good job. Like, sure, physics didn't seem to apply, and sure, planets were able to randomly regenerate from getting exterminatus, but boy oh boy did they crusade it. The Ghoul stars, despite their danger, are actually quite explorable and easy to navigate, you know, compared to the rest of the Halo stars. It'd be like being in an obstacle course where you can see the finish line, but the course is full of barbed wire, landmines, and rapists. On the contrary to the Ghoul stars, the Veiled region, which are another quarter of the Halo stars, is actually not too bad. Like, sure, the Astronomicon doesn't reach there, but at the moment, it doesn't reach half the fucking galaxy, so you can barely complain about that. There are Necrons chilling there, but they're not the flayed, spooky type, so it's not a huge deal. There are also numerous human and Xeno settlements that live in this region of space, and rogue traders will often dip into it for a bit and then get the fuck out. The Veiled region was where the Soul Drinkers ran off to when the Imperium threw the book at them, and they survived. Kind of. Coincidentally, a Mechanicus Explorator fleet also explored the Veil region at the same time as the Soul Drinkers, and other than having to fight Necrons, didn't encounter anything too mind-blowing or terrifying. Another quarter of the Halo stars is the Eastern Fringe, which is the only sensible and non-spooky name we've seen so far, probably because it's a pretty sensible and non-spooky region of space. The Eastern Fringe gets reasonably good Astronomicon coverage and is home to the Ultramarines, the Tau, and you guessed it, some Necrons.
Wait,
it's like
the Ultramarines live in one of the Halo sectors? Thought they called. Wait, where's Ultramar then? Is Ultramar one of the Halo sectors? Where's this fucking map? Make it bigger. Like Ultramar is huge. From the books at least, Ultramar is like 500 worlds or some shit. So it can't just be here.
Non-spooky region of space. The Eastern Fringe gets reasonably good Astronomicon coverage and is home to the Ultramarines, the Tau, and you guessed it, some Necrons. It's like all the physical laws and common sense was drained from the other 3/4 of the Halo stars and all dumped into the Eastern Fringe. And finally, the final quarter of the main topic of today's video, the Halo Star quarter of the Halo stars. Yeah, it's a little confusing. The Halo stars encompass the entire galaxy, but there is one quarter which is just called the Halo stars. I'm gonna just say the word Halo in a weird voice when I'm referring to the Halo stars of the Halo stars to make it easier to follow. Make sense? No? Well, sounds like a you problem, not a me problem. The Halo stars are creepy as shit and very unexplored. They have like a natural keep out vibe, which steers pretty much everyone clear of it. As such, unlike the Ghoul stars section, this one is super unexplored and mostly devoid of life, up until very recently in the lore. What we do know is that there was once, or maybe still is, a super advanced civilization that lived there, the creators of the Halo device. On very rare occasions, brave or stupid explorers will encounter an abandoned Xeno world in the Halo stars. Here they might find strange, beautiful devices, often looking like jewelry, that seem completely untouched by the degradation of time and neglect that its surroundings have endured. These are Halo devices, and holy shit, they are not a good idea to touch. If you pick up a Halo device and put it on, or put it in your pocket, or if you're a weirdo, just stab it into your flesh, it will begin to bond with you. This can take days, or if you're one of those weirdos, a few hours. Once the device is bonded with you, that's it. You are dunzos. Only way to remove it after that bonding period is to be violently killed, which becomes super difficult because you turn into a fucking raid boss. At first it's good.
Jesus.
You become youthful, energetic, really smart, and you can fuck like a rabbit on Viagra. Basically a superhuman without having to get the snip or developing severe autism. After a few years, some side effects will become apparent. Dopamine will be suppressed, and sleeping will become difficult. Mood swings get bad, and your mental state begins to deteriorate whilst your physical abilities continue to grow. After a few more years, you enter into a secondary phase, where the cons really start to outweigh the pros. You can no longer sleep, you're monstrously powerful and durable, the Halo device is absorbed into your flesh almost completely, and your insanity becomes apparent. Around this time is when Halo device users also develop a taste for human flesh. You are basically Dracula at this point. Your mind begins to turn alien and it receives visions of alien shit whilst your own old memories fade. You can still kinda hide what's going on here, but yeah, not looking too hot. And finally, the third and final phase, the Teteradary phase, I don't know how the fuck you say that, which occurs a few decades later. By this phase, you are a complete monster and you look horrifying. You can't remember your own name, but you can speak in lost Xeno languages, so you know, that's pretty neat. You are nearly unkillable, and you're built like a demon, with claws and an exoskeleton and other cooked shit. You can even come back from the dead. Some even say that any who wield a Halo device into the Teteradary phase are completely invulnerable. The Inquisition would beg to differ, and have killed numerous Teteradary phase Halo device wielders. It's really amazing how—
I love how, I mean, I don't know what word it is that he's trying to pronounce, but I love how he's done it 3 times now, and it's been different every single time. Tertiary. Oh, in the tertiary phase. Sorry, I'm not taking a stab at Major Kill. I'm the last person that really gripes about pronunciation at all, because I'm South African and our pronunciation is fucked. But it is always funny to me, and that was just, it's funny because it just gets progressively less like the word. Being someone in a hive world and having a shitty job look like a walk in the park compared to this. Well, what is interesting about these Halo devices is that it seems like they turn you into whatever the origin species was, or is it just punishment? So basically like a failsafe. They don't want people to have their information, and so the Halo device turns you into a mindless monster to ensure that you can never actually share the knowledge of the Halo device.
How quickly the term invulnerable loses its weight when you throw a motherfucker at the sun. All in all, a pretty shitty trade-off, but I'm a massive fan of how a Halo device has no connection to chaos. Xeno-corruption's really cool to see in Warhammer lore, and it helps shake up the game beyond "give me your soul and I'll give you 3 cocks," you know? But yeah, it is confusing as to why people seek out these devices. You only get to enjoy the cool youthful part for like 5 years before everything goes to shit, and whilst you do become immortal, it's not really you anymore by the 30-year mark. The only people who get Halo devices are super rich, well-connected people who know of their existence and can fund the expeditions to go get them. But surely
Well,
these
that
people
answers
aren't
the
that
question.
dumb. It might have something to do with the fact
That answers the question. Rich people are fucking crazy. I mean, that's why they're a problem everywhere. Of course, rich people are going to buy these Halo devices and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to insert this into my peephole so that I can fucking be big and strong forever.
that like 1 in 10 Halo devices don't come with all the negative shit side effects, but those odds aren't good enough for me. There is more in the Halo stars than the Halo devices. In the Calyx sector of the Halo stars lies the Kronos Expanse, which is a new untouched cluster of systems. Strangely enough, the Kronos Expanse is actually quite livable, with a number of new Imperial worlds popping up there. This is helped by the fact that there is a shitload of natural resources and wealth to be found. It's really hard to get to though, like it's completely surrounded by warp storms and may as well be a pocket dimension with how cut off it is from everything. It does seem though that the colonization of the Kronos Expanse is the Imperium's first proper attempt at conquering the Halo stars. Probably won't go well for them, but I'm keen to see them try. Also, I love spooky unknown Xenos, and if they're gonna pop up, it's gonna be there. That is not to say that the Imperium hasn't tried to conquer the Halo stars before. Lord Solar Macarius, aka Space Alexander the Great, gave it a red hot go. When old mate Macarius launched a crusade so legendary that it would make a Primarch moist, he conquered thousands of new worlds for the Imperium in only a few short years. The crusade didn't end because they were beaten or chaos had to be dealt with. The crusade ended because there was nothing left to conquer. They had reached the edge of the Segmentus Pacificus, and any further voyaging would put them in the Halo stars, and not the nice ones. But you better believe our boy Macarius didn't give a fuck. He went hard and fast, and he penetrated those fucking stars. He was ready to keep on penetrating, but his fleet was not. They were like, bruh, it's so dark, we can't even see the Astronomicon. Plus, it's spooky. And Macarius was like, stop being a pussy, onwards. But even the threat of being known as a pussy wasn't great enough, and the commanders begged Macarius to stop, and they even thought about assassinating him if needed. Macarius eventually agreed, and he took the fleet back to Imperial space, but he was pretty salty about it. The existence of the Halo stars provides so much potential narrative and new threats for the setting. The Rungdun could be hiding and rebuilding their strength there. The old ones might be watching and subtly altering the course of the galaxy from there. Cthulhu lookalikes might be hatching their own plans. The possibilities are endless. I also want to note quickly that I love how most of the Exodite worlds are in the Halo stars. Well, like in the Eastern Fringe Halo stars, you know, which aren't that shitty. They're like, fuck this galaxy, fuck the Imperium, fuck chaos, I want to ride dinosaurs and smash magic mushrooms in peace. I reckon there's a bit of Exodite in all of us. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be. Only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of Battle Mace hentai. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more Halo content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Dude, I want to learn about which book would I have to read to learn more about the Halo stars. The Night Running Aldar are in the east as well. All the cool stuff is in the east of the galaxy. Yeah, you're just saying that because the Tau happen to be in the east as well. But from what I can see on this video, the cool shit is happening on the other side. Several. As with all things in Warhammer. As with all things. This was a cool video. Halo Stars Explained. I don't feel like the Halo Stars were that well explained. Because I still don't quite understand how these Halos work. But I'm assuming that's just because no one really knows how they work. They've been introduced, but they don't They've not been explained yet. That's probably why. Like, I've been made aware of them and how they sort of what they do, but not why they do what they do. The Emperor is a corpse. Stop worshipping that thing. Grofile, shut the fuck up. Dude, you will not commit heresy in this fucking chat. Is in some old codex, an older 40k rulebook, and 2 RPG rulebooks. Shit. Okay. To my understanding, there are no specific books about the Halo stars, just mentions of them in different books. Most of the lore on that comes from rulebooks. That sounds like a heavy bolter heresy right there. Dude, that sounds like Exterminatus sort of bullshit. Okay, before we go, I'm not getting this video from Reddit. I do apologize, but I literally saw this, and since we just watched one of them, I want to see the Ghoul stars explained.
G'day, guys and gal. The Ghoul stars are a really terrible place. 0 out of 5 on TripAdvisor. I'd honestly rather go to India than the Ghoul stars. Considering Nurgle is about to enter real space there, that's saying a lot. Whilst the lore on the Ghoul stars is shady, there's enough info to make a video packed with some good old-fashioned nightmare fuel. As a small teaser, the Ghoul stars is home to evil spooky shadow balls, creepy death monsters, a Necron flayed one empire, and presumably some ghouls. Although I often call my drunk gutter-bound mates ghouls, so that term can be used pretty broadly. Before we get started, huge shout out to Malt for making this sick Major Kill Terminator Lord artwork. It's a Titsnitchian take on it with huge Lich King vibes, which I'm frothing. You can actually get this dude sent to you as a Major Kill model if you go to my website. He, along with the Space Elf Deathlord, who definitely isn't an improvement of any official model, shut up, a Space Marine Major Kill model, and a more medieval fantasy Major Kill model, which have all been restocked and ready to go for anyone in the world. Worldwide delivery, OP. If you're wondering why I haven't been pushing these models very hard since their launch, it's cause you demons bought a whole bunch, and I had a fat backlog I'd been smashing through. I'm a money-loving capitalist, but I'm not the kind of greedy pig who would market a product for sale when I'm busting my left nut to get all the existing orders sent out. But yeah, the backlog is cleared and I've pre-printed a few hundred more models for you guys to grab. Remember, if you paint a Major Kill model and send me a photo, I'll feature it in future videos and on my website. All prices are in Australian dollars, so cheap as chips, boy. Today we'll go over what the Ghoul stars are, what lives there, why they're so spooky, before delving into a few fan theories about what's going on. Let's get into it. What are the Ghoul stars? Well, they aren't a star made of ghouls, I can tell you that much. Kill me. In all seriousness, because I'm a serious kind of guy, they are a cluster of stars in the top right hand corner of the galaxy, depending on your perspective. They are a seriously undesirable part of the galaxy that the Astronomicon doesn't even read.
Dude, I like the name of that star, Malfactus. I don't know why. I like the name of that fucking whatever the fuck that is.
I mean, at the moment, the Astronomicon doesn't reach half the bloody galaxy, but you know what I mean.
Desperation.
These stars,
Jesus.
along with the worlds that surround them, used to be a hub of human.
Dude, just looking at this map, why the fuck would you go there? There's a place called Desperation right there on the map. You have Malfactus right there on the map. It's sort of like, okay, never fucking mind. I'll go somewhere else.
Human and alien life, until some Cthulhu-looking motherfuckers came around and brought upon the apocalypse to 1,000 worlds. This event was called the Harrowing, and whilst the info around it is scarce, just like any info about any previous war that didn't go well for the Imperium, it seems as if in the 32nd millennium, interdimensional Lovecraftian monsters opened a breach in space, then skull-fucked everyone to death. Only being stopped when mankind found all 5 Infinity Stones and then threw the One Ring into the fires of Mount Doom. Yeah, look, I don't know all the info. Yeah, look, I don't
Just take like a bunch of super overpowered bullshit and put it together. That's how you defeat these guys. Lovecraft is you can apply it to anything. Dude, the thing with Lovecraft is much of it is so many fantasy worlds use Lovecraft. World of Warcraft, the Void is 100% Lovecraft inspired. In Warhammer, it's not just the Eldritch horrors, but a lot of the Eldritch horrors, including some of the Chaos Gods, are very much sort of related to the Lovecraftian era. So Lovecraft is kind of like Lovecraft is to horror what Tolkien is to fantasy.
I know all the info as most of it is redacted and I personally wasn't there to witness it. The aftermath of this harrowing was an extremely unstable sector of space where horrific Xenos have now made their home in. There's a weird supernatural vibe to the place. Planets refuse to get exterminatus and pretty much every expedition sent in there has resulted in mass death. Except for the Black Templars one, but those dudes invaded Fairyland, so they definitely can handle
Alex,
some
appreciate it, bro. 23 months.
That wasn't the only
part
issue
of the
that
DJ
came from
Nation.
the
Appreciate you, fam.
Ghoulies. Soon after that, around the 34th millennium, another massive issue emerged from that cheeky little star cluster. This was called the Pale Wasting, and it seemed to be a malicious plague backed up by some kind of military might. I say this because 11 Space Marine chapters died containing the threat, and I doubt they just fired bolt guns at sick people until the problem was solved. This sounds like some Nergalite shenanigans, however the Ghoul stars have repeatedly been implied to be free of chaotic taint, and instead it's some of these goddamn aliens causing such a ruckus. I much prefer this being a non-chaos thing, so GW.
Dude, if that's true, it means that not even the Chaos Gods are willing to go there. So these worlds, first and foremost, he says that the worlds are immune to exterminatus, and he said in the previous video, they would exterminatus and the planets would literally just grow back. Just instantly fix themselves and come back. You have the Chaos Gods refusing to go there, which suggests there might be something even worse than the Chaos Gods in the universe.
Don't fuck this up. Let scary Xenos be scary Xenos, not just a bunch of demons. Either way, after the Pale Wasting was contained and over 10,000 Space Marines had died, the Death Spectres Space Marine chapter set up a watch over the Ghoul stars and monitor for any signs of the return of the Harrowing or Pale Wasting, making them a contender for Space Marine chapter with the shittiest job in the galaxy.
Wait, is Chaos scared of the Necrons, or do Chaos just not waste their time with the Necrons? Be planning a massive invasion into the Ghoul stars? I mean, Nurgle's probably going to get his ass handed to him. No souls, no interest. Oh yeah, wait, they don't have souls? I mean, they're robots, but they used to be mortal.
Since both these events, the Imperium hasn't really hung out too much around this area of space. Can't say I blame them in the slightest. However, this has created a new haven, unclaimed by a major 40k faction and full of bad voodoo. Hence creatures such as the Togoran Bloodreek, as well as the Scythor Fiends were able to flourish. Now we have next to no info about the Bloodreeks, other than the fact that being near one pumps up your health insurance premiums, but the Scythor Fiends are a bit more fleshed out. On the outside, they look like a bunch of, well, ghouls. But they're actually an advanced Xeno race that live in fortresses of glimmering crystal and throw exploding silver ninja stars. Despite being incredibly inhospitable to anyone visiting the Ghoul stars, the Fiends were happy to stay in their own region of space. However, the Black Templars were not cool with this. I mean, they aren't cool with a lot of things, so it's understandable. Hence, they launched a crusade against the Fiends. Now, silver exploding ninja stars are cool and all, but they don't really do much against an 8-foot tall, heavily armored demigod who embodies the spirit of weaponized autism. Hence, the Fiends were purged throughout the stars, and eventually only their home planet remained. The Black Templars attacked it, but found it completely devoid of life. Hence, they exterminatused it, to be sure. At least they tried to. The planet was able to undo the effects of the exterminatus each time. Even when the Templars figured out how to bypass the planet's anti-exterminatus defense, it was still able to quickly dispel the effects of it. Weird. Eventually, the Black Templars just shrugged and left. After all, genociding 99% of the Fiends was not a bad effort. The Fiends are not the true danger of the Ghoul stars, however. They are just an appetizer. The true horror of the Ghoul stars is the Bone Kingdom of Drazak. This is a Necron tomb world which has almost completely succumbed to the Flayer virus. The Flayer virus is basically a computer virus that infects Necron minds, causing their bodies to distort and rely only on melee combat as they seek to flay living creatures and wear their flesh. Very grimdark indeed. However,
What
for
the
some cooked
fuck?
reason, their overlord, the fallen Lord Ghoul, is Flare virus free, but still chooses to stay on this fucked up tomb world and look after his subjects. Maybe he feels bad he couldn't prevent the virus, maybe he didn't want to give up his throne, or maybe it's Maybelline. Either way, this strange unit has elected to live amongst the Flayed Kingdom. Every little while, he even coordinates them to attack worlds to flay a bunch of bitches to keep his people happy. What a nice guy. For a short time, there was another contender for biggest dick in the Ghoul Stars. A Tyranid High Fleet journeyed through the area and was corrupted by the bad voodoo. It's not super clear what the corruption did, however the High Fleet soon attacked an Imperial world on the border of the Ghoul Stars and was noted to be especially savage. The High Fleet was put down like a dog, and since then, the rest of the Tyranids have happily labelled the Ghoul Stars as a no-fly zone. So yeah, all in all a pretty grim place to be, definitely earning its 0-star rating. But this spooky stuff, other than the harrowing and the pale wasting, is all pretty standard. The galaxy regularly sees Necron flayed ones, Tyranids, and asshole Xenos. What else could be in the Ghoul Stars that have people worried? The prevailing theory that actually has some evidence is that there are more dimensions than just real space and the warp. A third nightmare-esque dimension where especially horrific entities lurk that could be connected to the Rangdun, the Sloth, and other Lovecraftian-inspired stuff. When the Templars were exterminating the Fiends, they discovered that the Fiends were seemingly from a different dimension. They noticed that the Fiends didn't seem to colonize or reproduce normally. Instead, they apparently used some kind of interdimensional 5D voodoo to create more of their species. It's kinda complicated and references some science that I understand enough to find interesting, but not enough to accurately explain it in my own words. How does this relate to the Ghoul Stars? Well, the theory is that the Ghoul Stars is where the veil between real space and this shitty asshole dimension is thinnest, hence why non-warp based apocalypses such as the Pale Wasting and the Harrowing were able to emerge from here. This would also explain why the area is so wrong. The Necrons living here were turned into flayed ones, why the worlds here are all dead, and why the Tyranid High Fleet that went through here turned insane. It's because small parts of this nightmare realm are leaking into the Ghoul Stars and twisting everything there. There's a good chance that the Scythor Fiends are originally from the Nightmare Realm, and arrived during the Harrowing, but were considered a small enough threat to not require exterminating.
Dude, imagine if these things woke up and truly attacked the galaxy. Even if the Imperium and everyone stood together, would they even stand a fucking chance? Stuff though, it's from the Death Rattle Curse of the Catan. What the hell's the Death Rattle Curse?
You know, until the Templars got involved. Either way, it's super interesting, as theoretically, the setting of Warhammer 40k is going to be around for as long as it's making money, which is hopefully forever. So one would assume that eventually another threat to the galaxy could emerge, and what better threat than one from the Ghoul Stars. People also theorize that the Ghoul Stars is the home/origin of the Umbra, which are these shadowy death balls of hatred, which are similar but not the same as the asshole balls from the Astartes series. As the Umbra seemingly use dimensional powers and are pieces of shit, it would make sense that their home would be an interdimensional anomaly full of other assholes. Another fun little theory is that the Ghoul Stars was the original home system of the Necron tier, hence why it's full of bad vibes. It could also be said that due to the Necron's reality-twisting weaponry that was probably tested and used in this area, is why the Nightmare Dimension is leaking in. Other than these theories, there are a few other silly ones, like that the Ghoul Stars is home to an unshattered Catan, space vampires, zombies, and Timmy's real parents. Really? Sure, maybe, I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter, mate, you're never seeing daylight again. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be. Where only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more twisted content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one.
Who wants to see that?
Peace.
Who wants to see Shrek fucking backdoor a goal? Jesus. Makes a weird thought that if the Necrons are out here and the Neds are past that, the Neds are supposed to be moving away from where they were. That there is way crazier things past that. I mean, has it ever been confirmed why the Tyranids are in why the Tyranids have arrived in our galaxy? Or are people just assuming that Tyranids eat galaxies? That's kind of their thing. So there's never been any evidence presented as to why the Tyranids have shown up. I don't think Nids come from outside the galaxy, or else they would have to pass through the Ghoul stars every time. There are assumptions, but no facts. The Umbra are the mad remains of an old one, but I don't remember much of that. There are only Tyranids, Orcs, and Necrons beyond the galaxy. It might be that the Tyranids are not so much eating the galaxy as it is fleeing whatever their stars were, because their stars got consumed by whatever the fuck these eldritch horrors are. Right? And that's why they're here. For them to be extragalactic. Wait, are there Necrons beyond the galaxy? I mean, I can see that. I mean, there's obviously, I don't know much about this, so mine truly is just the normal theory, with very little to back it up. I'm just sort of thinking because they arrived in our galaxy from outside, and now we know that on the outskirts of our galaxy exist these halo stars, and the Ghoul stars specifically have these incredibly fucking horrible creatures in them. And it might be that that's why they left. And that's also why they refuse to go to the Ghoul stars, because they have encountered these things before, and they know that these things cannot be killed. The Silent King was extragalactic. The War in Heaven was more than just the galaxy that the Imperial has. Do we know that for certain, Chabad? Did you ever watch the Bravo Alpha Booster if the Emperor had a text-to-speech device? Hilarious stuff. No, we haven't watched that yet because I don't know enough about the lore. We tried to watch it once, and it did not really work because I didn't understand half of it. And the jokes are only funny if you actually understand what the hell the jokes are. So we never actually got to watching it. All right, so the next video that you guys wanted to watch, we'll just approve this one to make sure. All right, so the next one that you guys wanted to watch is 40K, The Emperor of Man, a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's time to complete this series. I agree. It's been a long time coming, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long time coming. We watched number 1, number 2, number 3, number 3.1, and now number 4. Let's see.
Today's video is brought to you by Audible. Audible provides a great service for members that I personally use and why I highly recommend it. It's also one of the best ways to make huge savings on Warhammer audiobooks. Today we're returning to discuss the Emperor of Man, and as part of that I'm considering the details within the audio-only short First Lord of the Imperium. If you've never heard this before, I greatly recommend it, but due to its short nature, you might want to consider purchasing this through Audible, as premium members get a 30% discount on audiobooks, and this is generally my preferred option for shorter stories. As an Audible Premium member, you receive 1 credit every month for any title across their entire premium selection, and these are obviously best used on full-length audiobooks. Most 40k narratives are, for example, over 10 hours long. A great many of you in my audience are already using Audible, but if you're yet to trial it, you can start today with a free 30-day Audible trial and get full access to thousands of audiobooks, originals, and podcasts also included in the Plus catalogue. Just visit.
You want to know what the saddest thing in the world is? I'm going to be forced to listen to the Warhammer books in audiobook because it is so fucking difficult to get the books in South Africa. So, for example, I have the Dark Imperium, I have the Dark Imperium Plague War, but apparently there's a third book in the Dark Imperium series that I obviously don't have because they don't have it in fucking, they don't have it in stock. The local bookstore has none of the Horus Heresy books. it has, I saw just this weekend, they had 2 new Warhammer books. The problem is that, this is annoying, but the problem is that both of these 2 new books are the second edition or the second book in a different series. So they don't even have the first book in a new series. Big Borka, how you doing, bro? Thanks for the follow. Really appreciate that. So yeah, I'm gonna be forced to fucking listen to this shit in audiobook. And I don't like audiobooks. I prefer actually reading this shit.
At audible.com/Luton, and for those in the US you can also text Luton to 500 500. Details of my other upcoming selections till the end of this year follow at the end of the video.
Minuar, my bookstore, I've ordered books from them, but they have told me there's no guarantees. Because they place the order at the Black Library, but because it's South Africa, they usually only get sent whatever is left over, because the South African Warhammer market isn't that big. So they usually only get whatever. Came from the Clips channel. Looks like I joined at the right time. Big Borka, happy to have you here, bro. Thanks for the first time chat. Really appreciate that. That PO box would be nice right about now. Jabert, I forgot. I suck dick. I apologize. I completely forgot. I promise I will do it. Just fucking keep reminding me, right? Just keep reminding me. As soon as I have another day off, I will go and register a PO box. I don't even quite know where the fucking post office is, but I'll figure it out. Here we go, boys. Strap the fuck in. Dude, can someone quickly tell me how in the hell, where does Luton get his artwork from? Like, does he commission these things, or am I just not searching the right things?
Time seems to pass by so quickly, and I feel like I somehow have not spoken of anything heresy era for a long time, which is seemingly pretty accurate, as it has in fact been 2 years since we last considered the story of the Emperor of Mankind.
Wow.
In my last exploration of the Emperor, we considered the interpretations of the Emperor via the Last Church in relation to faith and religion and how it sits in a wider context of humanity, plus of course his attempt to eradicate religion from human culture by outlawing all mythical and superstitious belief and worship within the Imperium. This of course later unfolds in the wider timeline of 40k to become wildly ironic, and his actions in seeking eradication of all religion from humanity finally look to be something if not near to, then fully hypocritical. As the story of the birth of the Imperium and heresy have further unfolded alongside the future developments of the Imperium in the distant Imperium of M41, we see that humanity, having fallen back on religion, has moved from being backward looking and against everything the Emperor stood for to now become so important to its very survival. We even begin to see the unbelievable possibility of the Lord Commander of the Imperium questioning both the nature of the Emperor and the importance of religion. It's always difficult to decide a specific area for discussion when talking about the Emperor, because anything you touch upon inevitably will just lead to further questions, interpretations and speculations. And this is because, despite all that has been revealed, the true nature of the Emperor, his intentions and his ultimate goals, in truth, no matter how confident the theorizing, remain entirely unknowable, and I'm going to restate that many times through this video. Now you might think to yourself, hold on now, aren't I the law orator here, the researcher, and I'm supposed to reveal to you my grand interpretations, lay it all out for you, and say, gather around now friends, I've arranged all the puzzle pieces, and I'm going to let you in on the big secret that you're not meant to know. Now, I could do that, of course, but it would all be a lie, because I've spent many years reading, rereading details, saving relevant quotes and excerpts from novels, shorts, novellas, and all the material that together should bring us firm conclusions. Yet despite this, beyond some vague leanings toward possibilities, which I will get to at the end, the true nature and the core objective for the Emperor remains still completely inexplicable, but I still maintain that anything else is pure guesswork. Now, despite this, I will, by the end of today, try and arrange for you where I think we are at. But that is not the same as laying everything out and saying, I know how it goes, because that isn't the case. Now, are there theories? For sure. There's speculations, guesses, interpretations, and I could probably do videos for an entire year speaking about only the Emperor, because every single sliver of information gives you such minuscule amounts of insight that you feel like you're never truly getting anywhere. And even when they are more clear, usually something misdirecting or contradictory comes along. Not to mention, at this point, you often can't tell if it's a truth, a half-truth, a brazen lie, or perhaps just a misinterpretation of something said or done. Despite all we know about the Emperor, he remains a figure that, unless you're willing to trust his intentions on faith alone, like Malkador, his true nature and intentions are really just as much a mystery as they always have been. Compounding this is the fact that, as you know, I try my best to, generally speaking, operate primarily on the detail.
Meth Hammer, you motherfucker, thanks for the 2 and sub. Welcome to the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Manuar, I appreciate that very much. I'll definitely be using that. I just wish World of Warcraft had this much art, because it would be fucking cool if I didn't have to go like layers and layers and layers and layers and layers down in order to get Warhammer art, Warcraft art for my videos. But you know, it is what it is. But anyways, the link is in chat for Minuar, by the way, for those of you that do want to go check out some Warhammer art. I will say, when it comes to the Emperor of Man, everything that Newton have said up until now is probably why I love the Warhammer universe so much, is exactly because so little is known about the universe. So much of it is just guesswork. They give you just enough. This is what true fucking storytelling is all about in fantasy universes. Tolkien spoke about this so often. In almost every single interview that they've ever done with him, every single excerpt that I found of people speaking to him, they'll ask him a question, and there are some questions that he just refuses to answer. Like, just straight up won't answer. Sorry, go fuck yourself. Because he believed in that. He believed in that idea of your job as a writer isn't to answer every single question that the viewer has. Some things can be left up to interpretation, can be left up to the imagination, and that is what usually spins these webs where people get entangled into it. And I think that's one of the success stories for Warhammer, is the fact that not all questions are answered. Most questions are left completely unanswered for the reason it leaves people like myself, people like you guys, Luton, Major Kill, to speculate about what this could potentially mean. Because there are no true answers to it. My problem is that they give us evidence of him being a terrible person and for a noble person. But Scott Burke, that's where you have to find relevance. Now, this is something I don't want to talk about it too much, because we do have a Luton video to watch and it's already an hour and 40 minutes long about. But I will say, a lot of people struggle to separate relativistic morality when it comes to fantasy universes. Now, in the real world, I agree that there is no such thing as relative morality, because morality is almost always in the eye of the beholder. In other words, you can absolutely have different people having different moral values. but I am always going to determine your act as good or evil based on my morality. So it's not really relative. It's not a relative concept. It's a concept of, I view what you just did to me as evil, therefore it is evil. Now, you could view what you just did to me as good, and that's perfectly fine. That is your morality. But morality is determined by the viewer, by the beholder, the person that it is happening to, or the person that is standing by and watching it unfold. In fantasy, almost everything is relative, because morality will almost certainly be created or would be a product of the world and the life that you lead, right? So in the Imperium of Man, or in the Imperium, slavery is considered to be normal. Therefore, slavery is considered to be moral. Now, there is an argument to be made that it is not, in fact, considered moral, because Rabute Gilliman has an actual problem with how the Imperium treats its people and the thralls and the servitors. Gilliman has a massive problem with that. So you could make the argument that it is not indeed universally moral to have slaves in the Imperium, but since everyone has slaves and slavery, or at least in this case servitorship, is completely accepted and also widely used, one could say that that is moral for you to have that. And it would be moral, even though it's not moral in our terms, it's moral in that universe due to what that universe is and how that universe sort of arrived at that point. So in this case, the Emperor being evil and noble, it's kind of like a point of view thing. It depends on who you ask.
That we do know, and offer my interpretations of the verse and its adjacent themes. I always try to flag when something is pure speculation or not, and clarify things which, generally speaking, appear to be accepted when they probably shouldn't be. Plus, as I've stated many times before, it remains my opinion, and as I've noted also before has been stated by multiple core 40k authors, that in the verse of 40k, the very concept of canon itself is a fallacy. And those are not even my words. The very nature, the very landscape of 40k bucks against the idea of having such sanctioned, standardized constraints almost by the definition of the parameters it operates within. And this is a fact which for many is a cause of much annoyance for the people who enjoy ticking boxes and tidying things away neatly. The funny thing, of course, is that in many ways, as I've said, my life would be a lot easier if everything was neatly sorted and labelled and marked, but on the other hand, also far less interesting. I think a good reference would be, as John French said in the afterword of Mortis, speaking to the idea of current authors still sowing the seeds for future revelations in the 40k verse. He said, "It is more plausible that the stories of the future would not match reality. The people of that time, if they know anything of the Horus heresy, don't know fact. They know stories that have grown and twisted and merged from multiple people and events. How was the Inquisition formed? Who was Moriana? Who was Olanius, the Pious? Who saved who and how? How did the belief in the God Emperor take hold in a broken, formerly secular society? Reality is not clean, and neither are stories." So
in Dark Imperium, they actually do such a good job of explaining this through the eyes of Rabute Gilliman. Gilliman has this entire sort of organization set up of librarians that hunts for truth in the 10,000 years that he have missed. Is it 1,000 years or 10,000 years? I don't know. However long Rabute Gilliman was sleeping, or basically out of commission, because when he got back, he saw the 10,000 years. When he got back, he started looking at the history, right, of the Imperium, and he was like, "Wait, this is wrong. Like, most of this have been completely rewritten." Rabute Gilliman says that there are quotes attributed to him that he never remembers uttering whatsoever. He doesn't remember saying that shit ever to anyone, and yet, according to them, Rabute Gilliman said these things, and almost all of it is always seemingly used in some form of manipulation. So if they want the population to do something, they attribute some quote to Gilliman that says that this is the thing that they should do. So he has these historian, librarian type people hunting throughout the galaxy for records to find out what exactly happened and how exactly it happened. And even they are finding it incredibly difficult because almost all history and all records have been rewritten and changed and adapted consistently to fit whatever, the modern era of propaganda needs to be.
Clean, broken society. This is the galaxy of 40k. It's not about things being tidy and clean and easily defined. It's the shattered, twisted remnants of information scattered across an ever-changing reality that actively attempts to distort, twist and manipulate information and facts. The very dimensions of the galaxy itself are actively working against those within it, and even if you only were to consider the Heresy series, it's still over 60 novels. We, as those outside the verse, are then left to somehow try and pick apart the confusing, knotted and ragged threads of a destroyed but rich tapestry and decide for ourselves just what pattern they were originally supposed to form. After some time, I've often thought how you end up starting to feel like Ol P himself. You have memories of events, conversations, things you thought you knew for sure, things that happened, references you read, but then you stop and you consider, wait, were these real? Or were they just badly stored memories, corrupted details of discussions that you in one moment discarded but simultaneously remembered, albeit incorrectly, and then later recalled and blurred that memory with some other piece of information? Sounds overdramatic and absurd, yet I have regularly had conversations with people and or read comments who are as confused as this. Such is the nature of the narrative that forms the 40k verse. So pity the authors who are required to do continuity checks. As I've so often said, 40k as a fiction begins...
Van Honkerton, so to that, I would say just based on what I've learned about the universe so far and from the Dark Imperium, the reason the Space Marines probably don't have very good record keeping is, one, a lot of the Space Marines are newly created thanks to Belisarius Cole? Right? And then the other one is almost all of the chapters seems to be involved in small bits and pieces of the galaxy. They're not really involved in the day-to-day issues. So they're not involved in the decision-making of Terra and how that would influence other planets. So the only information they would have is whatever is relevant to the area in which they sort of exist. So, yeah, they would have records of what happened to them, but they probably wouldn't have a lot of records about anything else outside of that. There's a lot of paper because of being afraid of computers. Yeah, that's probably the other problem, right? Patrons leave the record keeping to chapter serf scribes, I believe. That's what it's called, the most sus man alive. But interesting. Interesting as fuck.
To mirror itself more and more with its increasing difficulty to keep the actual reality of things clean and certain, if it ever were. And then you have the Emperor, which somehow always starts off feeling easy, and then when you start to get into it becomes migraine-inducingly vague, and when you actually reference his recounting, his visions, supposed memories, pearls of inexplicable reference and philosophical wisdom, contemplation. Even when he isn't being vague, you can rarely tell if he's lying right to somebody's face, constructing some house of lies to imprison them within, or if he's telling the truth in such an unbelievably assertive fashion that any individual cannot decide if it were even the truth or not. This is the case all too often when the Emperor speaks with his closest aides and companions. You're never really sure if he's being truthful or setting them up with some web of intentional misdirection. Most of the time, his deepest seeming revelations precede an event that results in a horrifying end for said individual, and so his revelations are some method of preparing them for this fact. Consider Custodes Ra or Malcador himself. This is of course why I presumed he often referred to himself as Revelation. It's occurred multiple times, Uria in the Church of the Lightning Stone, Magnus, Malcador himself. The Emperor's choice of being Revelation among so many other names I always assumed to be something of an amusement likely to the Emperor himself knowing his astonishing levels of arrogance. in the sense that he has seemingly never truly revealed his honest intentions to anyone, or not that we've seen anyway in a pure sense. And even when it appears to have occurred, its authenticity or entirety are questionable at best. Whenever a character is speaking with the Emperor candidly, it always feels like someone doing a deal with the devil, where you're trying to figure out what are the extremely important pieces of information that he's not telling you and that will likely cost you your soul in very short order. The Emperor's choice of Revelation also seems applicable as an ironic reference to the Book of Revelation itself. And we know that there is a current attempt in the 40k verse to connect the events between it and the history of ancient Earth. And the fact that the Emperor is believed to have existed in this time, although, as I note, this usually occurs through dreams and singular accounts that I consider still personally questionable. You have Ol P, for example, a long remembrance of himself and the Emperor destroying the Tower of Babel. In this same lucid vision, Ol also references the use of dark, powerful knowledge, laying waste to cities, the Enuncia, till they were nothing but ash and salt.
Oh.
And this very obviously is a reference to the destruction of Sodom, and Lot's wife, who looked back upon the city during its annihilation when told not to, and turned to a pillar of salt. So yes, we've come so far in the storytelling of 40k that its newest novels are now making biblical references, which means we really are getting dragged even further down into the cultural and philosophical rabbit hole.
Dude, I'll just say this. If they're going to start diving into the Book of Revelations, there's some shit there. My brother and I have been, discussing the Book of Revelations. Perhaps after this video, I'll tell you guys about that, but there are some, that is a rabbit hole in and of it fucking self. As such a big rabbit hole. So if they're gonna go there, it is fucking rough. I'm gonna the stuff about the big A before this is wild. Dude, everything that Luton tells you is wild, pretty much always.
My personal thinking was always that the Emperor calling himself Revelation was an entirely deliberate biblical reference, simply based on the fact that it's hardly subtle, and therefore fits entirely for the Emperor. Because for as mystical and vague as he is in gifting information towards his ultimate goals, his execution of symbolism and metaphors generally leaves a lot to be desired. But considering this is a verse where Space Marine chapters were decided to number 1,000 Marines and not 10 or 100,000, I probably should let the Emperor's clumsy cultural winks and nods pass by. I'm far more irritated when a planetary battle is talking about having cost hundreds of thousands of guardsmen's lives, but I'm not going to rant about that yet again, or how the fact that hive cities, even with a tiny percentage of conscription, would form guard forces in the millions. But let's put a pin in that. So in referencing himself as Revelation, while interpretations and acceptance vary, overall it is predominantly seen as presenting an apocalyptic hope for humanity, or for true believers anyway. And I think however you may choose to interpret his actions and goals, you'd be hard-pressed to come up with a more appropriate title for the Emperor of Mankind than one which alludes to an apocalyptic last hope, but only for the souls who look to him.
Well, actually, I would say just knowing a bit, CCS, how you doing, brother? Just knowing a little bit about the Book of Revelations. Revelations is so much about destruction as it is about rebirth. Because the whole point of the Book of Revelations is it tells of the last days of Earth and then the salvation of all believers. So in other words, the Emperor calling himself Revelation would be apt. Because before the sort of renewal, before the perfection of life can happen, first there must be strife and horrible, horrible fucking futures. And then at the moment, so Revelation states that if if the Son of Man postpones his second coming by as much as one day, Earth will be no more. So basically, if Jesus takes one extra day to come back, according to the Book of Revelations, we would have destroyed ourselves in whatever is happening. So it speaks about just terrible, terrible fucked upness before the salvation comes. So that would be that it is an apt description of himself, because that is currently what they're living through, is absolute hell. And maybe the salvation does lie with him, but first the hell needs to happen, right?
The most difficult detail for us to unravel in the puzzle of the Emperor is of course his ultimate aim. At face value, everything we know of him points toward him being a benevolent saviour for humanity. He is, after all, the God Emperor of mankind, the all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful, immortal, moving silently down through the centuries, living many secret lives, struggling to reach the time when those who remain will battle to the last. And I would have done that with a Sean Connery voice, except that I can't. So eventually, after doing Highlander for a bit, the Emperor emerged out of the destruction and chaos and ruin of humanity's own making to lead us onto an all-new time of chaos and ruin. That is to say, the true path of our eternal glory and enlightenment. But somewhere along the way, let's just say, mistakes were made, and now humanity exists on the edge of destruction yet again, over 10,000 years. If only things had been different, if only the Primarchs, the Emperor's beloved sons, had not turned away from him, but of course for the foul corruption of chaos. The damned demon gods of the warp twisted and infected the minds of his sons. For the longest time we believed, and in my opinion the matter is not yet settled, that the gods themselves reached out from the warp and scattered the Primarchs, and in so doing whispered the initial corrupting doubts to some of their number, which makes more sense to me than an embittered companion of the Emperor stealing them somehow and then dispersing them somehow. The early seeds of corruption were sown. These incepted doubts by the Chaos Gods inspired those in the future to throw off their shackles of loyalty to the Emperor and instead align themselves with the ruinous powers, along with several true believing instigators to push things along the way. But so much of what we thought were true now lies even more in doubt. Was it the gods of chaos, or did enraged trusted companions of the Emperor attempt to separate him from his Primarchs in a futile attempt to disrupt this course? This has been precisely what I've been trying to get people to understand about 40k for so long. Things are only true until they aren't. One person's account, opinion, perspective, reference, anecdote is only worth its weight in contextual evidence. When I myself talk about 40k lore, I often try to walk a line between imagining myself in the verse and how that would shape my perspective and opinion, as opposed to purely being an outside observer. This means that I tend to view snapshots of information, stories told, and so on through a very skeptical lens, because we simply cannot verify said person's authenticity. You're relying on the author to be sincere through what a character is telling you at a meta level. And very often in 40k, this is demonstrably proven to be inaccurate. And this often again annoys people, and it has done so with the steady development of certain details in the heresy. Some things that were previously believed to be known events get distorted, things Horus has said, Ol P taking a stand but actually not, scattering of the Primarchs but then maybe not. You get the idea. Why is this important to understand? That narratives operate on several levels. It's important because, as I've often referenced before, narratives as complex as 40k are often telling you details and interpretations within wider contexts, usually through an invisible narrator who describes what's happening and how characters are feeling, what they observe, and so on. When a new narrative opens, it's rarely a character speaking, it's an invisible narrator. And so we as the external viewer are therefore not necessarily always able to see things in their complete form. You feel like you do, but that's only if you just accept everything as it appears to be, and some people do really get defensive about this kind of thing. It says X happened, or a character did X or felt X, therefore, because it says so, it must be true. Now again, being skeptical about something doesn't equate to meaning that literally anything goes, and the verse is just a free-for-all. It's simply
Lucas, thanks for the Prime sub, did really appreciate that. 3 months, part of the DJ Nation, appreciate you, fam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It feels like a lot of people in the Warhammer universe don't read the books correctly. And this comes from a guy that literally have only so far read one of the books, or almost finished with one of the books. Because even in Dark Imperium, every single thing that's said there is said by some narrator. It's not an omnipresent voice that ever speaks. There's no amount, like the only time they don't really speak through the narrator is when they're describing a setting. And even then, a lot of the time, they'll be like, Varys was looking at this thing and it looked like this, and this, right? So they're constantly using these narrators to describe things to you, thereby tainting it through the view or the mindset of the narrator. So whenever people say, oh yeah, this is absolute canon because this was said, you have to remember that it was said by someone. And that someone is important because that someone may only have half of the fucking story. Only watch lore videos and take the things said as facts? Okay. That also makes a lot of sense, yes. Most people get their lore through memes, to be honest.
It means we have to be cautious about how much weight we give to certain things, because usually there's some truth in most things unless it's a just full blatant lie. Now, not wanting to get overtly technical, but like so many narratives, it's helpful to think of 40k in terms of diegesis. Now, all this means is that the narrator tells the story. It's how it's presented to us. Diegetic elements are part of said world, whereas non-diegetic refers to elements outside of the world. In a movie, it might be a sound we as the audience can hear, but characters inside the movie cannot. In fictional narratives, it's helpful to understand the structure because diegesis has 3 levels. There is the extra diegetic level, and you might want to think of this as the highest level surrounding everything, as this is the level of the narrator. They're telling the story. Next, we go into a verse at the intra-diegetic or just diegetic level. This is the world of the characters, their spoken interactions, their internal thoughts, their physical actions. And then you have inside of this the meta-diegetic level. This is where characters will tell or present a story within a story. For example, a spoken anecdote, a dream shared, a vision. Why is this important? To me, it's important because I always think of each level being less reliable from the position of an external viewer. And I want to note this is my personal opinion now, not something established or set in stone. I always see the highest level, that of the extra diegetic, as being the most reliable, the author themselves, the individual least likely to lie or misrepresent something deliberately. So for example, if a narrative tells us Horus walked down the darkened corridor, it was cold and damp, I feel pretty confident that I can trust the corridor was cold and dark and damp. If Horus was telling us himself or speaking to another character at a diegetic level that the corridor was dark, it felt cold and damp, we can trust this fairly confidently. But what other factors might be affecting his perception too? He's within the fictional verse, maybe what he sees and feels is being distorted. Then at the meta level, if someone was merely retelling this, well then you're getting into things like bias, personal agenda, distortion of reality, poor memory, the list goes on. So the point I'm trying to make is simply that when we consume something fictional, but most especially thinking of the 40k verse, it's just important to understand things are operating at different levels of reliability, in my opinion, anyway. Would you trust something a demon said in 40k? Probably not, because it's a demon, and when it's telling you things at a meta level, you know it has all manner of potential contamination issues with the validity of that information. Now, an Astartes recounting something is going to be more reliable than a demon, you'd think, but my point is only that we should be cautious at the meta level, and especially within 40k, because we cannot know what other factors are or were at play in distorting that account. But I hope what I just noted helps to see how the path and narrative for the Emperor that has been told was already far from being solid. When did he gain his power? What was his plan? How did he work with Malcador? How powerful is his foresight? The Primarchs were flawed, yes, but intentionally or through lack of foresight. Some were twisted and corrupted to turn against the Emperor, but was it truly the gods of chaos who orchestrated it? Was it the Emperor himself? Is the Emperor truly benevolent, loving father, or a cold, calculating entity as far removed from humanity as the Astartes and Primarchs and demon gods themselves? Many have noted that there is something underneath the Emperor, something behind the psychic veil of power and beauty. John Grammaticus, Corax, Ra, Guilliman, many have seen momentary glimpses of something beneath the veil of his power, something much more cold, much more inhuman. In Deliverance Lost, Corax notes, "Is this your true face?" "I have no such thing," replied the Emperor. "I have worn 1,000,000 faces over the millennia, according to need or whim." "I remember this one," said Korax, dimly recalling a dream he had glimpsed when overcome by his wounds in the crashing Thunderhawk. "This was how you appeared to me when I was born within my pod." "Yes, it is strange that you should remember that," said the Emperor, his expression becoming sterner. It's very clear that the Emperor hates for anyone to see through to his true self. But why? As I noted at the end of episode 3 in this Emperor series, the primordial truth uncovered the greatest lie of the Emperor. The greatest cost of this lie seems to have been the Imperium imploding into the heresy as unwitting Astartes legions are caught off guard and are thrown into absolute chaos. The galaxy burns, and Calth. As I noted though, there is this deeper, hidden, but I admit speculative truth for the Primarchs and Astartes that he is possibly not their singular father. What I meant by this was our discovery in Vengeful Spirit, the well-known discovery through Horus, that the Emperor visited the world of Moloch, where it is known there is a portal to the Warp long before the Great Crusade itself. Now, as I said, this is far from a new revelation. It's formed the core of discussions for years about the origins of the Emperor and just what he has done in the past or his personal agenda. Now, we'll note in some ways it's actually largely irrelevant because whatever he achieved by visiting Moloch, we know how he ended up, and so much time has passed that any repercussions have already played out. In a real sense, what matters is the modern progression of events in M41 and just what occurs there. Historically though, and specifically in regard to the Emperor himself, it's still interesting and important to consider. This reference to the Emperor's visit to Moloch is something people have often discussed and leveraged to bolster speculations about the Emperor, theories, intentions. It's very important to remember though that there exists little evidence that suggests to us exactly what the Emperor did during this visit. We really only have a reference from Horus, which is likely an opinion and considerably biased, and a perpetual who is seemingly more reliable but also very thin with her information and so not particularly helpful. We're left instead to infer for ourselves, likely very deliberately, what occurred, which has inevitably led to widespread disagreement. Like I said though, ultimately it is somewhat irrelevant at this point. Generally, it is presumed...
Dude, I cannot help while listening to Luton, I feel his frustration. Because, I mean, I make videos about Warcraft, right? World of Warcraft specifically. And I do lore speculation. For those of you that didn't know, my main channel on YouTube is all about lore speculation, World of Warcraft stuff. And I do very similar kind of videos to Luton, not as I do more speculation, so probably... You guys mentioned someone in the Warhammer universe that also solidly just focus on speculation stuff. So my videos are sort of a little bit of lore, a lot of speculation. And one of the most frustrating things ever is you come up with a speculation theory, and then your comments are filled with people disagreeing with your theory with nothing other than their own theories. Like, you're wrong because clearly it's this. And you're like, do you have any evidence for it being clearly this? No, but it's obvious. Like, well, if it was so obvious, we would have all arrived at that specific conclusion. The fact that I arrived at a different conclusion suggests that it's probably not as fucking obvious as you would like to believe. And I can hear Luton's frustration in this video, trying to point out and highlight that you cannot just believe things because everything is subject to change. Everything can change. You're wrong because your Twitch comments also disagree with you. That's probably true as well.
That the Emperor travelled to Moloch and went into the Warp, for this was the only reason for his coming there. But it is wholly speculative that he made a deal with the Chaos Gods. There are vague allusions to him having stolen from the Dark Gods, so many presume this is suggestive of having gained knowledge, which presumably would be in exchange for something or the promise of something. Although I would argue power and psychic strength of other powers might equally have been gained as well. We know the Chaos Gods grant this to their champions, Mortarion, Fulgrim, Horus.
The disco option, thanks for the 2 months up, did really appreciate that. 9 months, part of the DJ Nation, appreciate your fam. It could also just, FYI, the stolen thing, so let's say we trust the Chaos Gods, and we trust that the Emperor did steal from them. It could just be the secrets of the Warp. So the fact that the Emperor had this knowledge of the warp, knew how to use it, knew how to use the magic of the warp, they consider that stolen. They consider it an affront that a mortal that is not of chaos, or immortal that is not of chaos, would possess the powers of the warp. And therefore they view it as stolen. So it could be that they never lied. They are 100% correct. It's just that the Emperor didn't steal anything like tangible. It's more knowledge of things that he should not have had that he stole,
etc. Now, any potential deal or theft might also explain why during the Crusade the Emperor is so urgent to complete his goals. For someone who is so powerful and such a perfectionist, he accepts the degradation of Space Marine genetics just so they can churn out as many as possible to get the Crusade concluded. Now, we do know that the Emperor is just frustrated with humanity. He wants to push it forward, and that's one of the thrusting goals that we are aware of. He just wants to move things forward and get on with it. But throughout the entire sequence of events until the end of the heresy, even before Horus turns, there is this immense sense of urgency on behalf of the Emperor, where he's cutting corners and just really pushing the envelope as much as possible, which makes us question if he were not working against some invisible imposed time constraint or some other form of impending deadline. And there is in fact a small sliver of evidence toward this, although it's thin, but it's where Malcador actually says the war began before we were ready. It's never wise to put too much weight into a singular statement, but it is Malcador, and he is speaking specifically of his and the Emperor's plans. Like I say, many have grown to accept the Emperor's speculative bargain with the Chaos Gods as a near enough certainty now within the 40k lore, but it's anything but, it's merely implied. The Emperor may have made a deal he later broke with the Chaos Gods, deceiving them and promising something he had no intention of delivering, or he may have promised them something in the form of a terrible unknown sacrifice for humanity. Is entirely unknown, for it's just as plausible that the Emperor not honouring such agreements are in fact what caused the apocalyptic descent of corruption that caused the Horus heresy. And this tends to be the view of other perpetuals who are known to the Emperor, Ol P being the most notable, who outright made a point of telling the Emperor that his actions may well be what brings the doom of mankind, and that he's just better off staying out of all of it. So this is one possibility, that in attempting to save humanity, the Emperor has in fact forced certain reactions.
Dude, I just want to say, that is so fucking interesting. Malcador states the war started before we were ready. Suggests on some level that they always knew that war would come, but they thought that they would have more time to prepare for it. That has me thinking now. I wish I could just download all of the information of Warhammer 40k into my brain, just within seconds, and just know it all, so I could really think about these things and know like what the limitations of those thoughts should be. Border Set is the short story you want to read. Border Set, all right. Probably Big A planned to debate the Primarchs the same way he did the Thunder Warriors. Maybe, but I don't necessarily think that's the case, because he did care about the Primarchs more so than what it seems like he cared about the Thunder Warriors. Were they talking about Chaos or Tyranids? I don't know what they were talking about. I like to think that that part about him striking a Faustian bargain of knowledge for exposure of humanity to chaos was very much true. Yeah, I could see that as being true.
Realities to become true, and perhaps entirely unintentionally. This is a very common principle within time, that if you, for example, saw a glimpse of the future, you may feel compelled to try and avoid it, stop something happening by taking actions, but those actions could then inadvertently cause the future you saw, and you'd actually have been better off by doing nothing at all. Except the very fact that you saw the future at all means at that point you probably have already been affected and set on a changed path. This is the whole issue related to time travel and cause and effect and meddling in things and altering the course of stuff. But this is why I continue to maintain that time is an important factor in the 40k verse. I wish it weren't, but I think it is. Horus being shown a vision of the future, real or not, it affects him in a way that changes his actions. And I'm not going to go off on another time rant here and now, but suffice to say a lot of time travel narratives deal with this issue. Okay, just quickly then. Now, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but my personal opinion is that it's fairly clearly established by now that the Emperor is far from the all-seeing individual he is perceived to be. He can see into the future, certainly. He is wise and he understands humans better than they know themselves, and he is powerful compared to nearly all others in the galaxy, but he is far from being perfect, and neither are his visions and associated plans. He references this heavily when speaking to many of his companions, a prime example being when he's speaking to Custodes Ra in Master of Mankind. Where you stand now, the Emperor said, is the present. Do you see the top of the cliff? Of course, sire, says Ra. That is the future. You see it, you know what it is. Now reach it. Ra hesitated. Now? Climb, Custodian. You question the nature of my foresight, I am granting you an answer. Ra moved to the rock face, looking over the stone, finding his first grips. He tested them, finding them strong, even...
Metal Van, I like the game. Van Honkerton, no, the scene isn't wonky. I want to look for a game to play. I just got the sort of itch to see if I can find a game. So that's why I'm here. Dude, what the fuck? Holy shit. EA Sports FIFA 23 mostly negative with 12,000. What the? Wow. Sorry. We're just, there's no updated game to fix bugs. Well, they achieved that. You can't experience bugs because the game no longer boosts. I buy game, don't start, try solution, don't start, try new solution, don't start, refund. This game has more problems than me. Oh my shit. It's been a week since the game was released, but you still haven't been able to solve the anti-cheat error. You are the most scandalous company in the world. Oh my god, dude. Okay. I make the same mistake every year. Well, yeah.
Against the weight of his armor. The weaker ones he avoided. Less than 10 heartbeats had passed when a rock cracked and crumbled in his gauntleted hand. Ra skidded, arresting his fall by clutching at the stone. Another gave way, sending him the last few meters to the rocky ground in a breathy cloud of white dust. You looked for places to safely grip, said the Emperor. Yet you have already stumbled. You did not know the stone was weak. It looked strong. The Emperor smiled, and it was by far the most unpleasant sight Ra had ever witnessed. Emotion painted across a human face, as false as the grotesques at any masquerade. Yes, the Emperor agreed. It did. And you only learned the truth too late. The Emperor then gives Ra an...
Wait, what the fuck? He said the Emperor smiling was the most unpleasant sight he's ever seen, because it's emotion across a human face, but it's fake. Dude, that is wild. It's a pretty good game. I have 70+ hours and I'm enjoying it thoroughly. I can't play any games with like massive voiceovers or stuff like that. Clamoring, how you doing, bro? And yeah, you guys are welcome to send me games on Steam if you want. I'll obviously fucking love you for that. My username on Steam is Akalon, same as everywhere else. Yeah, I mean, that quote alone sort of makes one wonder about the Biggie's like claim to humanity.
Another example of seeing a distant shore and trying to get across to there. Curiously, while speaking, the Emperor's eyes glaze over as if he's either lived this moment or considered it deeply many times. He tells Ra of all the things that could go wrong during the crossing, eventualities that were unpredictable, from the ship being poorly built to sea monsters devouring the vessel. And the Emperor describes how each passing moment is rich with 100,000 possible pathways, minute after minute, possibility upon possibility, path after path, all variables you're unable to see from where you stand at this moment. The Emperor reached out as if he could crush the coast in his golden gauntlet. His expression was cold in its pale ferocity. I can see the coast, Ra. I know what awaits me there, but I cannot see all the infinite vicissitudes between here and there. That is foresight, Ra, to know 1 trillion possible futures and to be left to guess at the infinite ways of arriving at each one, to map out even one possible eventuality, taking into account every decision that every living being will make that will impact upon the others around it, would take all the lifetimes I have already lived. The only way to know anything for certain, and he trailed off, gesturing to the distant shore, is to reach the other side, said Ra. Now, if you were to believe the Emperor, you come away with the sense that he is unable to see clearly the future, which fits with what we know of 40k, as even the most powerful Eldar seers cannot see the future clearly, as it were. They see more like possibilities, moments in the future, but not necessarily what implicitly happens between then and now. It also, yet again, depends on what sort of time principles you're operating on, and this is where you could splinter off into talking about multiple timelines and so forth. One quick thing to note, multiple timelines does not necessarily mean that every decision possible creates a split into a new timeline, but it may do, or it may not. But truly this is something for another day. The point is that the Emperor may well be operating on the principle of being a self-fulfilling prophecy, which he regularly fails to note when giving examples of his.
To me, that quote suggests that the Emperor does indeed not see the future. The Emperor is either the Emperor does see the future, but he sees the unformed future. In other words, he sees every possible outcome of every possible decision, right? But he doesn't see the decisions. So he just sees 1,000 different outcomes, and it's up to him to try and figure out which decision will match with whichever future. Because he does say there to Ra, mapping out every decision and every possible outcome would take all the lifetimes that I have already lived. Okay, so the only way to truly know something is to get to the other side, which is effectively the point there. So he knows what the future would be, he just doesn't know what decision brings about which future. Now, a better word for that would be strategist. If you're a rationalist and a strategist and intelligent, you could probably, even right now, just looking at the world state, right? We have Russia that invaded Ukraine, you have America, you have Europe, you have China, you have all of these countries involved. We could probably sit here, you and I could sit here and we could figure out every possible scenario in which this plays out, right? And it would probably not even take us that long. We could most likely knock out in, say, an hour all of the possible futures that await us due to the modern state of the world. The issue then becomes what course of action brings about which one of those futures. So if we want the best possible future, in other words, the future where Russia goes, oopsie, leaves Ukraine, the world goes, oh, never mind, we actually can produce a hell of a lot of things, so never mind this whole inflation bullshit, all the prices are coming down immediately. You know, that future, we would have to try and figure out what collection of choices, because it's never going to be just one choice, because it changes every single time. You make one decision, and then you have to figure out, okay, how do things change now to bring about the next future, and the next future, and the next future, and the next future, right? Until we get to the one that we ultimately want. That would probably take us fucking probably 1,000+ years if we're lucky. We probably wouldn't even be able to do it in that amount of time.
His inability to clearly see how to successfully get from A to B. He sees a potential future vision, but not what occurs in between. Through his actions to prepare for said future, he ends up creating the vision he saw, meaning had he not had the future vision, he may not have taken those actions and therefore not created that reality. An example being, maybe if he saw a vision of the future where the galaxy is in flames, burning, worlds being slaughtered, he may consider the need to try and save humanity. yet in so doing, create the very forces which cause the galaxy to be consumed by the fires of war. Now, that's a clumsy example, but it's the basic principle. Now, a self-fulfilling prophecy is a specific type of causal loop, and it need not happen purely from psychic precognition. It could simply occur via access to knowledge or some other gained awareness of the future. It's also worth noting that not all SFPs, self-fulfilling prophecies, are true causal loops. A prediction of something that alters your behavior does not necessarily equate to being a causal loop. That's just normal cause and effect. Like if someone told you that wearing a headband while playing sports ball on the weekend would ensure you to score a goal, and so you wear one and you score a goal, the fact that you did is unrelated. There's no loop because it's just something someone randomly determined. Even if you had ignored the advice, you may well have still scored. These kind of non-looped SFPs can go in both directions, in the sense that if someone said to you, well, if you didn't do something, then X would happen. Well, if it happened as they told you, this is not necessarily suggestive of it being a causal loop. It's just like saying to someone, it's going to rain tomorrow. If you don't take an umbrella, you're going to get wet. Well, that may be true and predictive, but it's not a causal.
Mythhammer, we already have that. There's like a number of think tanks out there that run algorithms with all sorts of, like, feeding it all sorts of information. And almost all of their algorithms predict that nuclear war is inevitable, which is sad as fuck, right? Ooh, Cesius, thank you so much for the Outer Wild gift, bro. Really appreciate that. I will be accepting this. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, bro.
Loop. The key thing when it comes to
I'm
an
gonna check that
SFP
out.
causal loop is that there needs to be some means by which one entity has access to information beyond our four-dimensional verse, namely a future vision. That vision or extra information that causes actions that would in all reasonable likelihood not have occurred were it not for that vision. It could be also some other information, you find a book from the future or whatever. This is what causes the loop, because without the vision you would not have taken the steps to either attempt to avoid or deliberately create it, and thereby not enable the vision in the first place that caused those actions. This is of course another of my irritations with time stuff, interesting as it is, because it tends to screw everything up. And things like SFPs can often stray into territory like predestination paradoxes, backwards causation. Go watch my Dark Origins series for more on that stuff if you like it. The core underpinning idea though of a self-fulfilling prophecy is not actually just knowledge. As I've said before, what is knowing? SFP causal loops are more about belief than they are about knowledge. So, example, if you had a truly powerful dream of some inexplicable event, like say, saving a family member from drowning in a lake that your family regularly visit and swim in, but to which you rarely attended, but the vision is so...
Oh yeah, I will. Cesius, I absolutely will. Thank you, by the way. I really appreciate that. You can literally give it a budget and just set up a target audience, then it will just find similar audiences to those who converted based on shared interest. Dude, the algorithms of the world truly is fucking scary.
Clear, you can't shake off the feeling there's something to it. And later somebody tells you, hey, we're heading up to the lake this weekend. You feel compelled to go, maybe just out of curiosity more than anything. But at the back of your mind, you have this sense within you, this small shred of belief that what you felt was so strong, you feel like it's going to happen. At the lake, some of your family are sitting and standing out on a jetty. You feel more tense than usual because of your dream. Then somebody startles you. You spin around, knocking the person behind you off, and the surprise causes them to hit their head on the deck as they fall in. Quickly, they're struggling. You jump in to save them from drowning. Now, most SFP, because of their nature, for people in our normal world where we don't have psychers running around all over the place, it's extremely unlikely, and if they occurred, very inexplicable. I don't know if I would classify maybe very strong deja vu within that category, but perhaps. Importantly though, in this example, it's not the knowledge of the dream that's important. Like I said, we all have dreams about things that may or may not happen. It's the person who had the dream's unshakable feeling, their belief, that causes them to take an action they ordinarily may not have, and by doing so they end up in a position they otherwise likely would not have been, thereby creating the SFP. As I say, in our everyday reality this kind of thing is not at all commonplace, it's more just a theoretical musing on the nature of such things. But within something like the 40k verse, this stuff becomes far more applicable, especially when you're talking about beings like demons of the warp, aliens, seers. bizarre entities like the Emperor of Mankind. To go any further, we'd have to start talking about closed time loops, backwards causation, eternalism, origins of information, paradoxes, various other philosophical ideas, all very interesting, but not for today. Now, in relation to the Emperor, the most important thing for me is what does this tell us about the Emperor's intentions? Well, most importantly, it tells us that he has likely caused much of what has occurred, directly or indirectly, and it also tells us that he's likely playing a very long game. Although side reference, much like Star Wars, this concept of someone to bring balance to the Force in the sense of, right, but when specifically is that going to occur, feels very similar to the concept of the Emperor saving humanity. Everybody obviously presumes the Emperor was trying to save humanity prior to the Horus Heresy. Everybody presumes this was his grand plan, and that he failed. Except, what if it weren't? What if this were all part of his vision still, and that he knew from the beginning he would be interred on the Golden Throne? He knew that in fact the heresy was not the point at which he would save humanity, and that this is all par for the course. I believe there is a very real possibility that this is the case, and that in fact the Emperor's ultimate vision, based on the concept of a self-fulfilling prophecy, may still come to pass. There are though many...
Dude, Luton is stealing my theory. No, he probably isn't, but still, because this video, I think, is a year old at this point, and my theory came out like only recently. But that's my theory on everything, because it all seems to work in the Emperor's favor. He doesn't like chaos. He wants to defeat chaos. Here's the problem: if you are in the Materium, how the fuck do you beat the Immaterium? Like, how would the Emperor go to the warp and to the Chaos Realms and kill the Chaos Gods? Is that even possible to do? Most likely, almost fucking not. Right? But if the Emperor can be turned into a Chaos God, if he can physically be manifested within the warp, he can indeed kill the Chaos Gods. Because, well, he's in the warp. He's now part of the Immaterium, so he can bring order back to the warp. What he's doing now, read Godblight. I will do, just as planned. Get fucked, Zeech.
unknowns still remaining, but there are indicators that the Emperor knew of what was to come. For example, the Golden Throne was prepared from the beginning to accommodate massive amounts of psychers to be sacrificed. So why would the Emperor design and prepare the device to do so, if he had every intention of just leaving into the webway or using Magnus to help with the Golden Throne? Initially, the Golden Throne didn't even require the Emperor to be on it all the time. So why, when initially they set up the Golden Throne and the Sisters of Silence bring a load of psychers to be sacrificed to the Golden Throne, the Sisters note how, even in that first instance, the psychers being sacrificed only occupy one of 10 alcoves for the thousands that they have brought there, meaning potentially it's going to be 10,000 in the future. But the Sister of Silence rationalizes and consoles herself with the fact that this is only going to be necessary for one day. Of course, that's a lie. It was going to happen for the next 10,000 years.
Yep.
So again, why would the Emperor design and prepare the device to do so if this wasn't going to be necessary, if he hadn't foresaw this was going to be the case? Was it just a precaution? Was it future-proofing? Or perhaps the Emperor's vision thousands of years previous was of himself sitting atop a golden throne with thousands of psychers fueling him daily.
So, Albiwar, my theory effectively suggests that the reason the Emperor outlawed religion was so that when the time came, when he finally fell, humanity would have no other option but to navigate towards him as their god, towards him as their religion. Because if he kept Islam and Christianity and Buddhism and all those religions, people would have just sort of solidified inside their own religion. So Christians would have become more Christian. Muslims would have become more Muslim. But by removing all of those religions and getting people basically a-religious, he left himself open because he was the only natural option. And knowing that humans can't live without religion, he knew that once he was gone, because while he was alive, he was a symbol for humanity to live up to, right? But when he's gone, that symbol is gone. So there's only one way for that symbol to exist, and that is if that symbol is turned into quote-unquote religion or a god. Is that Catholics still exist during 40k? Wait, seriously? So it was the one Primarch that was actually spitting facts? Probably, pretty much, I think. That actually makes a lot of sense, because he's going around with his golden aura and literal miracles occurring everywhere. He would not do this if he wanted the Imperium to stay atheist. No, he wouldn't. There's a lot of things he wouldn't have done if he wanted the Imperium to remain atheist. Which I think makes sense. Vision of the world were probably already gone by the time the humans Stellar Confederation was a thing. They're called Catholics. And they still exist. I'm assuming that's heresy, right?
Horus and some of the other traitor Primarchs, Fulgrim, Mortarion, were upon the planet of Dwell. Horus has discovered some of the population have been placed into cryogenic capsules, 1,000 generations according to Horus. He states to his brothers how everything these people knew is preserved and blended with the hundreds of remembrancers and iterators who came to this world after Guilliman restored it to the Imperium. Horus explains he came to Dwell because he had become aware of gaps in his memories, time that he could not account for. And Primarchs have perfect memories. They recall every moment of every second, every day, from the moment they became self-aware, and so to have gaps in their memory was extremely unusual and disturbing. With so much having happened and the Crusade being taking all of their attention, this was not something Horus had been apparently aware of until now. But when he heard Robert Guilliman describing the library constructed by the Ultramarines' highest epistolary, that it rivaled the more solistic of Dwell's repository of the dead, he realised he had an opportunity to fill the voids in his memory. So evidently, this world contains the shared memories of remembrancers, iterators, and many thousands of individuals more spanning the last millennia. Fulgrim makes an offhand dismissive comment, but Horus presses him to recall every moment. Does he recall all of his battles? Fulgrim confirms, of course, all of it. So Horus asks him, so what of Moloch? To which Fulgrim realises he too struggles to recall the nature of Moloch. This is less an erasure of memory by the Emperor than it is a manipulation. He has likely additionally psychically distorted their memory.
Oh, and FYI, in the Dark Imperium, now I don't know if that was retconned, but in the Dark Imperium, Guilliman knows that he had 2 extra brothers. At one point, he speaks to someone on his ship. I can't remember who. Actually, to the new librarian on his ship. And he tells him about the 20 Primarchs, his brothers, that the Emperor created. And the librarian is like, 20? And and Robute Guilliman is like, yes, 20. Most Primarchs knows there were 20. Primarchs knows about their brothers, just not what exactly happened. Ah, okay. Because someone told me right at the beginning that the Emperor erased all memory of 2 of them from everyone. Learned after waking up. Interesting. They know about the whole 20. What they are unsure of, barring Leman Russ, is what happened to their legions. Okay. Middle of the Siege of Terra, anyway.
So that these gaps were not so apparent. He hasn't just purely erased, he's also bothered to try and cover it up. Huge gaps would be too obvious, so this obfuscation is designed to make them less noticeable. In fact, they start to realise the logs of the Crusade state several Primarchs and the Emperor travelled to Moloch, and it was a compliant world, no battle, no bloodshed.
That world.
The populace
never mind.
Were meticulous in their record keeping and well-remembered terror, welcomed the Crusaders' unification. So why, Horus wonders, did they remain there as the ship's logs state for 111 days, and when they finally left, the Emperor deployed heavy defensive forces, including 3 Titanicus cohorts, Imperial Army regiments, and Astartes Legion detachments. The reason as to why they are there is a mystery, and this is where Horus reveals his discovery. The iterator in stasis they stand around Varfel specialized in the early history of the Emperor himself, the Unification Wars, the myths and legends surrounding the Emperor and how he took the throne of Old Earth. Not only this, but his remembrance is blended with the memories of those on Dwell, some of which go back to presumably before the disturbances of Old Night, that is, the Age of Strife. Horus's masterstroke here is that some of those who exist in stasis on Dwell originate from Moloch and have memories from the ancient times before the Crusade ever began, before the Astartes or the Primarchs were even created. But most importantly of all, some of these settlers remember the visitation of the Emperor's first expedition to Moloch. Horus reveals that the Emperor travelled to the planet of Moloch centuries, or most likely millennia prior to the Unification Wars on Earth, and that his ship was left on Moloch, meaning he used it only one way, but returned still to Terra. Fulgrim remembers this detail. He says how there were cannibalized ship structures left there. What Horus says next seems something of a leap though. Horus states that whatever the Emperor found there made him into a god, or as near makes no difference. And many people see this as a problematic statement. Horus seems to jump suddenly to making this wild assumption, when one could just presume the Emperor used either the warp or potentially the webway to return to Terra. There's nothing that suggests he suddenly had godlike powers where he could just blink across the galaxy. But similarly, the warp and the webway, these are just also a possibility. There's no real evidence for either of these things. We don't really know what happened. The larger question is about the Dark Gods. Did they give the Emperor power or just knowledge? This is more difficult. What's also worth considering is that, as Fulgrim realizes, the power to distort the memories, not just on the Primarchs, but of 3 entire legions of Astartes.
Really?
And you start to get the sense here that Fulgrim is perhaps for the very first time realizing the true level of power held by the Emperor, and that it is by orders of magnitude far superior to anything the Primarchs wield. Now, this whole discovery leads into questions about just how powerful is and was the Emperor. People often say, well, why didn't the Emperor appear at some earlier point in human history? Why not during the Dark Age of technology and so forth? And the thing is, that's always a possibility, but with caveats related to how much knowledge we have about him, we just don't know. The figure known as Ol P, another perpetual, has shed light on this, as have other perpetuals. From what we are shown through their arguably biased and perhaps misrecalled memories, but either way, they're all we effectively have to go on, the Emperor is seemingly not as powerful as he would later become in these ancient times. Just why he became more powerful remains a mystery. This feeds into speculation, as Horus suggests that this trip to Moloch is why he became powerful. Now, as I say, this really is quite the split in the audience of the 40k verse around these details, because Horus also tells us how at the dawn of the Great Diaspora, the Emperor travelled here in humble guise and found the gateway to a realm of immortal gods. He offered them things only a god in waiting could offer, and they trusted him. They gave him a measure of their power, and with that power, he wrought the science to unlock the mysteries of creation. This is a very well-known quote in the 40k verse, and is often surprisingly still debated now, because despite it having been many years, we still are no really further forward in understanding some of these details. Horus goes on also to explain how the Emperor had no intention of honouring his debt to the gods. He turned on them, taking their gifts, blending them with his gene craft to give birth to demigods, the Primarchs. The Emperor condemns the warp as unnatural, but only so no other dare wield it. The blood of the immaterial realm flows in my veins, it flows in all our veins, for as I am the Emperor's son, you are the sons of Horus, and the secret of our genesis was unlocked upon Moloch. The gateway to that power is in Lupercalia, far beneath the mountain rock, sealed away from the light by a jealous god who knew that someday one of his sons would seek to surpass his deeds. And of course, this all depends on if you want to just accept Horus's version of events. A diaspora, by the way, is a scattering of ancient people from their homeland. Likely what this is referencing is humanity's first attempts at settling the stars, and what that means is that the Emperor likely travelled to Moloch in a non-warp vessel, meaning this is why it was crewed by perpetuals, as they were the only crew able to live through such a lengthy voyage. We also hear from another ancient perpetual, Olivia Soraka, who accompanied the Emperor on his long voyage. He leaves her behind to protect the warp portal gateway on Moloch, and she describes in a first-hand account how the Emperor emerged changed from the portal. In her eyes, he appeared to have aged at least a century, but what was for her just a moment. Later, when Horus goes to Moloch, he goes there not for information, not to make a bargain or some clever deal, but for power. He needs to be empowered by the gods. His desire is to be as powerful as the Emperor so that he might defeat him. Some have questioned why did the Emperor in all his power not just seal the warp portal if it was so dangerous? Well, Olivia also considers later how she knew that he couldn't do it. After what he had taken from the realm beyond, it would be suicide for him to draw so near to those whose power he'd stolen. We also don't know precisely who created this portal to the warp realm. Sometimes it's been speculated it was the Old Ones, sometimes speculated even the Necron. Honestly, we don't really know. The description of it being sort of black, irregular, smooth stone, it's pretty vague. Now, the Emperor gaining power here on Moloch is likely one of the most controversial aspects of the 40k verse. Like so much of 40k, there remain questions about past issues such as if the Emperor gained power here, how could he have dealt with issues like Catan shards in the past, the Void Dragon. Yet we should also consider if the Emperor was so powerful, why did he need to travel to Moloch in a ship at all? Many seem to presume that he can just blink teleport around wherever he wants to, although there's little to no evidence of this. Then of course there's the famous deal with the Chaos Gods, the information he gained to create the Primarchs. But again, this is extremely vague. Horus is pretty specific about it in manners of speaking, but again, do you want to take his word for it? How much is he inferring? How much is he guessing? Just what was it that the Emperor needed that only the Chaos Gods could provide? By the time we get to the period of unification, the Emperor had the vast resources of scientists and soon the Mechanicum working for him, yet he needed also to go to the Chaos Gods to provide the knowledge for the Primarchs. Somehow this seems unlikely, but again, this is something that is incredibly discussed and raked over so much. Some people speculate that he needed the Chaos Gods to provide souls for his Primarchs. Some people say it was just very complex genetic stuff and so on and so on. But here's really the question. If the Emperor so desperately needed this detail of how to create the Primarchs, why didn't he also bother to get other information that was equally difficult, that would have enabled him to successfully create, say, the Black Carapace, which ended up being...
Dude, there's so many fucking questions going on here. I'm not gonna lie, this is perhaps the most confusing video of Luton so far. It is absolutely fucking wild. How are you even supposed to figure this out?
Incredibly difficult and apparently nearly failed the Astartes project. So why didn't he get that too? Really, here's my final thought on Moloch. And note from here, these are obviously my opinions. And primarily, I'm of the view that people just get way too caught up on this whole thing. And overall, given the descriptions, even if you wanted to just put Horus's stuff all to one side, it's very difficult for anybody to really say that the Emperor didn't gain something from travelling to Moloch and entering the warp. It certainly seems from the various scattered references throughout the heresy later that those beings of the warp feel like they were wronged by the Emperor and they've got an axe to grind. This is not brand new information. What I think people seem to get most twisted up about is the blunt statement of things like the Emperor got his powers from Moloch, meaning like he was just an ordinary person and then when he went to Moloch he became this super being. It's pretty clear that's not the case. I think, as nearly always is the case with people seeking things to be determined definitively once and for all, they get very tunnel visioned and as a consequence kind of end up missing the point entirely. It's very clear to us that the Emperor was already a powerful psyker before Moloch. We know this, there's lots of references, lots of anecdotes, lots of spoken meta character references about it. He likely didn't gain all his power there. But I always think, why could he not simply have become a bit more powerful and also have done a deal? Why is it always spoken of in terms of it has to have been he got all of his powers or a deal? That's what I tend to see a lot. I think in actuality, he probably gained a little of both. But even this is really besides the point. Because the point of it all, regardless of whatever the Emperor needed and came away with, his actions accordingly triggered the Chaos Gods to begin to move against him. I think that's clear, and that, for me, is the critical thing. Because tick-tock. And that, my friends, is the point. It's not about how much power did the Emperor get from Moloch, that is mostly irrelevant. It's the fact that he went there at all and came away with some measure of something and triggered a ticking clock. a deadline to where we see the outbreak of war between the Astartes and the Imperium itself to happen ahead of schedule. The clock in the Church of the Lightning Stone, the clock of the eternal gods of darkness, the clock which, as I noted in part 3, is seen not only during the Last Church, but also appears in Thousand Suns, where Magnus is given a vision of the future, where the galaxy is in flames. Magnus, another example also of a self-fulfilling prophecy. When he comes out of his vision, he has this momentary sliver of sight of the same clock in the Last Church chiming the doom of mankind. And I think it's pretty clear that this is the whole point of the Emperor's story. It's about his hubris, it's about the Emperor in seeking to save humanity from disaster, set himself and the Imperium on course for disaster. He started the clock that would chime the doom of mankind, and when the outbreak of the heresy began amid a collapsing of planned events that Malcador references in First Lord of the Imperium, their time was up.
From the sounds of it, the Emperor going to Malok sparks the TikTok, right? That's where the clock starts, and that's where the war would ultimately break out. To me, that almost certainly signals the Emperor. He did something to piss off the Chaos Gods at Malok. Now, it could be that he stole stuff, right? That is entirely possible. That could be where he stole power, and that's where the Chaos God sort of got super fucking annoyed. It could also be that he killed something, tried to kill something, or just threw down the gauntlet to some extent, right? And that's what pissed them off. So Luton sees it, but we don't really know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any way of knowing. Like, maybe you could know these things, but I'm not so sure. I'm not entirely sure what could be known and what wouldn't, what is in the lore. If there's even books that could highlight this, you know?
So finally we come to First Lord of the Imperium. Now before we go further, there are a few things to clear away immediately. The first is that as an audio short and not a short story, this small but quite important narrative gets overlooked by many. Almost always when I bring it up, most people have not even heard of it, which is very surprising. But just a recommendation from me, listen to more audio shorts put out by Black Library. You never know what you might be missing out on. The second is to reference anybody suggesting that anything that isn't a main novel, i.e. the Heresy series or any other large full-length novel, is not to be taken seriously or as part of the main verse, as it were. This, as far as I can tell, is nonsense, and purely the opinion of individuals. As far as I'm concerned, everything that exists in the 40k verse, including the codexes, supplementary material, comics, anything else that's controlled and approved through GW, and therefore are all applicable and equally valid, because they're all signed off on, they're all part of the same verse. So be it an audio short, a short story, a novella, it's all approved and part of the verse. So, First Lord of the Imperium. The setting of this short is that the heresy has already broken out, and it is looking grim and severe for the loyalists. They speak about numbers from Beta Garmin coming in, but the actual date is unspecific, remembering the core of the heresy actually took place over an astonishingly short period of time. Malcador is on Terra at the Imperial Palace and has been called to the side of his personal astropath, and initially appears to be simply comforting a dying Aide. He's reminiscing to comfort and dispel her fears. Or is he? This is again what people tend to presume. But in truth, what this feels like is less Malcador putting her mind at ease. That only comes at the end. It seems more that Malcador is offloading some of the things that are of a great burden to him upon the only person he can, a trusted close confidant who is literally about to die and will never reveal his words to anyone. Malcador, for example, reveals in First Lord that he is truly ancient. Malcador states that he is in fact 6,718 years, 241 days old. This means if we are to believe him, and again, in this context we have no reason.
Wait a second. Isn't Malcador just normal? Malcador is one of the Emperor's advisors, right? Wait, how did Malcador become a perpetual then? Okay, wait, Fuck. Chat. Wait a second. There's a lot of things we have to sort out here. How did he become a perpetual? Or was he just always a perpetual? Ah. Who was it again? Oh my god. Wait, okay. Fuck. I need to get my mind ready here. Who was it again that sat on the golden throne during the final battle with Horus? Because the throne was meant to be prepared for Magnus. But because Magnus was one of the people... Was it Malkador? So Malkador is dead. Malkador is currently not alive. He is dead. And he got fucked by the throne. Yeah, the throne completely fucking wrecked him. Oh. This is rather interesting. How could Malkador be so powerful as to literally make himself a perpetual, and yet Magnus would have been able to survive on the throne, Malkador would not? Like, can anyone actually fucking explain this?
Not to, because why would he choose to randomly invent details just for this dying woman, especially one who already knows likely more about him than any other barring a select few? Why? There's no good reason at all for him to invent details that she actually finds shocking and pretty devastating. It's hardly putting her at ease, so the argument that he's telling her what she needs to hear to feel at peace or whatever, it's nonsense. And based on this assertion of his age, we can speculate that Malkador was born or originated in the early centuries of M24. This is interestingly just prior to the Age of Strife, and to put that in perspective, we currently exist in the time period of 021 M3. The astropath is known as Sybil Nyasta, and she voices a theory that many have speculated, that Malkador is being kept alive by the Emperor's psychic power, that this is what sustains him. Malkador explains no, this is quite wrong, in fact, it's actually backwards. Malkador explains to us that he is the last of his order, the last
You're not
Sigillite.
alone, CCS,
And more
mine
curiously,
too.
Malkador explains that the Emperor was not the Emperor until he met Malkador. Before he knew Malkador, the Emperor was, quote, only the greatest of many warlords of old Earth. They knew him by a different name. And this is a detail confirmed by Erda later in Saturnine, that the Emperor was known by a different name in the ancient times, although the Emperor himself has said as much many times that he had many names. But again, it slightly is working towards corroborating generally what Malkador is saying. Malkador also reveals that the Imperial Aquila is not a symbol purely of the Imperium and the Emperor. He explains that the Emperor has almost pure, focused tunnel vision on his goal, on his ultimate desire for humanity, which of course we know, and that this focus is so strong that he often forgets to look to the mistakes of the past and not recall the lessons learned. Malkador tells us that the Sigillite Order, by contrast, was created to remember human history, to remember humanity, to preserve. Of course, this is referencing the long period of the Age of Strife, and perhaps even before that, as he is the last of his order. It's suggestive that the Sigillite Order has been going on for a very long period of time. Malkador explains that without himself, the reunification of Terra would have been impossible. That's a pretty big statement to make. And he explains that therefore, our future is built on its past. Malkador showed the Emperor why all others have fallen, thus allowing him to build on the stability of Malkador's revelations. Now this is actually all pretty vague, and in some respects not particularly helpful beyond us understanding that Malkador has seemingly provided levels of invaluable counsel to the Emperor and enabled him with knowledge and visions that he himself did not hold, or at least in Malkador's mind, that's the case. Malkador, even during the heresy, is of the position that the Imperium cannot hold, but reveals that the Imperium was not designed for the post-humans, but for mankind, ordinary humans, not the Astartes and the Primarchs. This has of course been abundantly clear, and the premise of the Emperor's plan from the outset. After all, the High Lords of Terra, etc., etc. The Astartes are the tools to protect humanity, but it is humanity itself that ought govern. In practice, that hasn't worked out especially well, and again, High Lords of Terror, Vandire, the shambles of Ultramar, painfully rectified by Guilliman on his return, the list of human leaders in the Imperium proving themselves hopelessly flawed and easily corruptible is endless. And a small tangent just to note that despite all the pretense of the Emperor and the clarity that his creations existed only so as to achieve brief, immediate goals before being promptly and bloodily consigned to history, all in all this has proven to be something of a bizarre miscalculation now 10 millennia down the line. The Emperor also does not seem to view the Primarchs as his loyal and loving sons, but as objects, things, tools to achieve a task, and then be discarded. There's likely a reason why each of them was so specifically different and had very different traits and characteristics. It's because they're there to fulfill a specific role and then be thrown away, just as he did when he slaughtered the Thunder Warriors. In fact, with regularity, the Emperor refers to his Primarchs as it, and only calls them son if they are in his direct presence or he has need to speak to them in such a manner. Otherwise he refers to them in extremely disconnected, cold, emotionless terms. Now again, some speculate this is just part of the Emperor's grand misdirections, but I can't think for the life of me why it would be necessary, because usually when he refers to them as being less than human, he's speaking with close aides, people he can theoretically trust, so that seems to undermine such ideas. Also, Guilliman, when speaking with the Emperor in M41, reveals to us that the Emperor seemed different, cold, not as he remembered, not at all like a father. This is likely because the Emperor, so drained from 10,000 years on the Golden Throne, no longer has the ability, the power to maintain his illusions, and it's why Guilliman walks away deeply troubled, having now seen the truth of things, and again as others have captured glimpses of before. Quite simply, the Astartes were never meant to exist for 10,000 years. The fact that they have no restrained lifespan is not because they were designed to outsit eternity, not because they were supposed to shepherd humanity. It was simply...
Dude, this guy is just... The Emperor is too fucking much, bro. Like, the Emperor... Why would he not at least just a little care about his own sons? Like, I'm gonna be honest, the more I'm learning about the Emperor, the less I like the dude. Like, he seems like a big fucking asshole.
Easier for the Emperor and Malcador to create warriors with no lifespan because of the nature of what they had to achieve in the Crusade. Crossing the galaxy was no task that could be achieved in ordinary human lifespans, warp travel or not. This simple fact ended up creating the oddity that is the Imperium of Mankind. It's really a freakish creation. It's not by design, but happenstance. The Imperium of Mankind was never meant to exist as it does in M41. Malcador says quite clearly in this story that he can see Sybil is not afraid to die, so he is not at all reassuring her with the information that he will impart. She is in actuality terrified that the Imperium will fail and that too many errors and mistakes have occurred already, plus Horus is closing in on Terra, the doom of all beckons. But Malcador appears unshaken. He tells her, "Believe me when I say this, Sybil Nyasta. This was always intended to be the final act of the Crusade. We wanted the Primarchs to turn against one another, against their father."
Brandorius, you bastard. Thanks for the 2 months up. Did really appreciate that. 10 months in a row. Part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How can we say that he cares for humanity and has a vision for great future when he doesn't even love his sons? Well, according to most people in chat, a father does not need to love his sons. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, a father can absolutely refer to his sons as it, and it is just fine. It's just okay. Like, there's no need to call the fucking cops and be like, I think someone's abusing their fucking kids.
Be assured, we manoeuvred each of them from the moment of their rediscovery, pitting them against one another, stoking their brotherly rivalries with his unequal favour. It was not difficult, no more so than positioning pieces on a Cheops board, which is, curiously, a chess variant played in the Dune verse. Malcador also notes that those who could not be managed, well, they would never reach the endgame. This is possibly suggestive of the missing Primarchs erased from all records. but it could also be referencing traitor Primarchs.
Fuck you, Greg.
Malcador says,
Jesus.
"You fear that the Emperor cannot control his sons, and yet I tell you that this war is the method of that control. The Primarchs have no more free will than we gave them." Sybil answers, "Can it be true?" And Malcador exclaims how his failure was in underestimating the true enemy, that the ruinous powers emboldened their champions, and the war began before they were ready. He talks about how every toll of the bell gives pause to question, was it a death they intended, or another innocent soul they may have saved, and that this is his burden to bear, and that he does so that the Emperor may concentrate on the final battle to come. In his final words, Malcador tells her to fall, and he will catch you. This I swear, give yourself to him. Of course meaning the Emperor. As the dawn comes, Sybil lies dead. Malcador contemplates his further thoughts through a bitter and frustrated tone. He considers how the Emperor promised it wouldn't be like this. But most critically he says, "I lied to them to spare their sorrow, even as I envy their mortality, and it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart." Swallowing his grief and loneliness, he lays her hands on her in the sign of the Aquila. Now this short is a difficult one. It's clearly intended to be. Many people dismiss Malcador's revelations, as I noted earlier, but it is the nature of 40k. Information and details are fractured, and even without this revelation, you can largely piece together what is happening. The real difficulty comes in knowing what the overall plan would be precisely. The one thing I feel sure of is that the Emperor wanted to or needed the heresy to happen. It's pretty clear, as Malcador notes, that the Primarchs have all been positioned to agitate and create jealous doubts between them. You see this throughout the heresy, where the Emperor hardly is acting like a father figure, and there's many times where you just think, what the hell, why didn't he just appease and calm down that situation? Instead he allows these frustrations and jealousies to fester under the surface. But as Malcador notes, perhaps the timing of their plan was off, and this threw things into disarray. Also, it seems plausible that individuals like Magnus were not meant to turn to the Dark Gods, as we believe Magnus was meant to be, if not the power, then the controller of the Golden Throne in whatever role that was going to ultimately play. Again, remembering that before the end of the heresy, the Emperor was able to leave the throne for periods of time. This didn't cause disaster or stop the Astronomicon from working. Again, because the Emperor, remember, he was so powerful that he can control these things at a distance. It's only after the heresy that the Emperor is weakened, and so then must remain on the Golden Throne, aided by continual psychic sacrifice. Now, a small tangent about that. In the heresy, we see how Magnus is baited with visions of himself being the corpse on the throne by the dark powers to attempt to turn him. Of course, he resists this for the most part, and we know this is another attempt at creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, which kind of is what happens. Although again, just as with the temptation of Horus, how accurate was this vision of the future? Was it the future or just one possible future? And then, like I said, of course, ultimately it does become another self-fulfilling prophecy because of Magnus and another causal loop. This is what makes the end period of the heresy and the Emperor's ultimate goals to us so difficult, because many of the things he planned for appeared to be with a different outcome in mind entirely, but then also not things that he really voiced. A very obvious line of thinking that many people, including me, have considered is, could the Emperor's positioning on the Golden Throne be intentional? Is he trying to achieve ascension to godhood via the now galactic religion of the Imperium? Was this his goal all along? This is, like I say, not a new idea by any means, but it's difficult to see
agree with that one.
Why that would be necessary, given that essentially the Emperor was already a god by any definition up until his battle with Horus, and even in the aftermath for that matter. There's just too much we don't know. So we cannot say what Malcador is lying about also in reference to the First Lord, because we do not know exactly what the Emperor promised Malcador. Also where he says, "I lie to spare them their sorrow." What is he referencing here? Saying them could mean a lot of things, but it's most likely mortal humans or maybe Primarchs. I think it's fair to assume that as he's just spoken to this loyal astropath, he is more likely speaking about having to lie to those close members of the Imperial service about how things are going in the heresy or the plan overall. But this also does not necessarily mean that what he is saying, generally speaking, is a lie. There's always a foundation of truth to most lies anyway, after all. But here's the thing, if you were to just take these things at their most simplistic face value, the whole thing makes no sense. We're meant to believe that Malcador told her this grand tale about how the Emperor and Malcador basically wanted to bring down the Astartes because this was their whole plan, and she's meant to be comforted by this horrifying revelation. Why even bother? He could have just said, don't worry, Sybil, this is all part of our plan, we will all surely emerge victorious. But no, he tells her this was part of our plan, but now it's all gone tits up. That's a strange way to reassure somebody on their deathbed. It's hardly textbook where you lie and tell them everything's going to be fine and both of you nod understanding it's a lie. The whole point of this exchange is that he gives her a harsh truth. That yes, she can feel reassured that this was part of a plan Malcador and the Emperor forged, but also that it's not going exactly as planned. He's reassuring her by giving her actual truth. The lie is that the Emperor will not be there to catch her. Only darkness and the nightmare of the warp await. And it is this which is what is breaking Malcador's heart. Now I'll play devil's advocate and say, well okay, what if this whole thing was just a lie and the only reason he told her all of this was to save her from the far worse truth that the Emperor and Malcador do not have a grand saving vision for humanity at all, and that their best laid plans lay in ruin now. Everything's gone catastrophically wrong, and at this point they're completely winging it and hoping that they haven't inadvertently caused the doom of all humanity to total extinction and eternal misery in a version of hell.
That's
now, I'm
rough.
not going to lie,
Fuck
that's actually a possibility. But personally, I just don't see it. It's too bleak even by 40k standards, and it's also not really what the story of 40k and the Emperor is about. It also somewhat sets up the Emperor as being an incompetent, bumbling fool. Not to mention, it would also give this short the equivalent of an "it was all a dream" ending. It would be like those Star Trek episodes where everybody dies, and at the end they're like, haha, not really. I just think the premise of Malcador laying out all this stuff, and then saying, actually, it was all a lie, however you want to cut it, it just doesn't work for me. The much more telling revelation is when Malcador says, "You promised me it wouldn't be like this," in reference of course to himself and the Emperor. I think if anything, this is what helps the most to confirm what he just revealed, because again, otherwise it doesn't make any sense that the Emperor and Malcador had planned things with a grandiose scheme, but that the Emperor perhaps promised things wouldn't be as catastrophic as they ended up being. That fits perfectly. Why would he say that to himself if that wasn't the case? It wouldn't make any sense. Also, when Malcador tells Sybil that the war began before we were ready. As I noted earlier, I believe this to be a reference to the Chaos Gods pressuring them, perhaps having realised just what the Emperor was up to, or just part of some larger timeline and wanting to close things down now as quickly as possible. And that fits within, generally speaking, the wider picture of what we know. And beyond this, of course, in the wider sense, there remain many other heavy questions about figures like the King in Yellow, now believed to be Constantine Valdor. We know this via the Eisenhorn, Ravenna, Bequin novels. This is of course talking about the Cognate, and we learned that the King seeks to obtain the true name of the Emperor in order to obtain power over him. Precisely why and for what reason is unknown. We also know he has an army of winged space marines, possibly even Custodes like in stasis, but again, this is strange considering how Custodes are essentially genetically engineered to be loyal to the Emperor. But if it were possible for Valdor and his circle of the Eight able to overcome this, it's believable that they could be rightly outraged by the Emperor's actions and his plans if they were able to kind of get their heads straight, as it were. There of course exist possibilities that they retain information which also give greater context to their actions, and that's certainly a heavy topic for another day, and likely when there's also more information to go on, because right now sparse is an understatement. The point is, there is a lot that supports Malcador's explanations to Sybil. I believe that most of what Malcador said here is the truth, or at least from a certain point of view. Because, like I say, the alternative makes no sense. Then at the end also when he says, "I lied to spare them their sorrow, even as I envy their mortality." Malcador's heart breaks for the fact that any who die are not being saved by the Emperor, but they're falling into the horror of the warp. That is what he laments. It's why he also speaks about the death of innocence being his burden to bear. And that is why he lies to her, and he tells her the Emperor will catch her to spare her the sorrow of knowing she, and importantly, all others who are dying, are about to be sent straight to hell. Lastly, Malcador's sorrow that's breaking his heart, likely because he truly believed in the Emperor and that they were going to be able to save the majority of humanity from a dark fate, to secure humanity in the webway and thereby guide them into a new age of existence. But for Malcador, the writing is now on the wall. It's clear this will not come to pass, hence him saying it wasn't supposed to be like this. So to state the exceedingly obvious, when considering the Emperor of Man, we must assume he is playing the long game, perhaps the longest game, for he has walked across millennia and the true scope of his vision remains unknowable in terms of how he perceives time itself. I sometimes heretically question if the Emperor, not unlike demons, has something of the ability to see time from the eternalist viewpoint, whereby he sees past, present and future together, and he sometimes gets visions of the future, enabling him to adjust his plans, but the certainty of such future events, as we've discussed, may not excuse difficulties faced in the present, which, to be quite honest, somewhat conflicts with that concept of time. But perhaps it's somewhere within that view, or perhaps it's somewhere where there are future possibilities. We've been shown glimpses of the past that suggest it was as far back as the ancient time on Earth that he decided his true path, waiting for an ideal time until a situation presented itself. He would wait, passing through human history.
Alden, how so? What makes this a scraping the bottom of the barrel, in your opinion?
Observing, learning, and undoubtedly manipulating. I think the most disturbing and perhaps most telling aspect is when the Emperor chose to emerge as a force for humanity. Not during the Golden Age prior to the cybernetic revolt, he appears after this, when humanity is at its weakest, not when it was necessary, but when he needed it. That being when humanity can put up arguably the least resistance to his plans, and when the necessary tools are at his disposal, which gives me, to be honest, a deep sense of unease as to his true intentions, coupled with the fact that so often when those who know him well capture a brief glimpse of the truth inside, they seem not comforted, warmed, heartened, curious, but shocked, horrified even, and that's of great concern. Malcador says that the Emperor was not the Emperor until he met him, but this does not mean to say the Emperor was not aware he needed to and would also meet Malcador. We see many further glimpses of the Emperor Malcador's relationship, example in the short The Board is Set, where the Emperor prepares Malcador for his most critical role for humanity. And by the way, that's the core aspect of that story. There's some other stuff in there, but people get carried away with it. The Emperor's continued deception has left a galaxy racked by war, tearing itself apart. The Empire of Humanity, the Imperium, is holding itself together, but with ultimately near to no forward direction. Was this the Emperor's grand vision, or is it merely a pause? Has he, through his lies and arrogance, doomed humanity itself to a slow death via attrition? As Angron rightly observed, we fight to silence anyone that dares draw breath and whisper a different opinion from ours. We fight because the Emperor wants every world in his hands. For each time I wage war against worlds that threaten the Imperium's advance, there comes another time when I'm told to conquer peaceful worlds that wish only to be left alone. I am told to destroy whole civilizations and call it liberation. I am told to demand millions of men and women from these new worlds to make them take up arms in the Emperor's hordes, and I'm told to call this a tithe or recruitment because we are too scared of the truth. The truth Angron is speaking to, of course, is that the Emperor, like any tyrannical dictator, has enslaved humanity to his will, his unbreakable singular vision that must be executed and followed at all costs on pain of death. And this would then be continued for another 10,000 years under the banner of the all-powerful Imperium, the God Emperor of mankind. Again, was this the Emperor's grand vision? To emulate the despots, dictators and freakish cults of the barbaric wastelands of Earth in the aftermath of the Age of Strife? Or was it for all of humanity to exist in a stagnating, dying pool of despair? The Emperor all along has operated on the principle of going all in on his vision for the future. There was never going to be any half measure in his Imperium, his future for humanity. And that's not my speculation, it's very clear from the beginning when Ol P decided to turn away from the Emperor for this very reason, that the Emperor would allow no compromise, no adaptation, ever. This is later supported by accounts of other perpetuals. The Emperor demands absolute loyalty, absolute devotion and sacrifice, or suffer his unconstrained wrath. The Emperor will destroy and lay waste to entire civilizations across the galaxy that I've often argued, if only they were stronger, retained a little more from the dark age of technology, may well have been able to actually resist the Imperium. And what an interesting galaxy things would have turned out to be then. If of course they were also able to resist the Emperor, but that's entirely another matter. As things stand, there is far too much which remains out of reach to us, the most critical being to discover just what the Emperor's overall plan was. Because for someone who set out with an agenda of forming a civilization, a culture based not on myth, religion or superstition, as somebody not wanting to be seen as a god, he surely went far out of his way to do just about everything possible to be seen as one, while telling everybody continually that he wasn't. And if that isn't the ABC of how to form a religion, I don't know what is. So I think it's safe to say the Emperor doth protest too much. I mean, he literally made a Primarch who looked like an angel. Things got so confusing that even one of his own Primarchs couldn't tell which way was up. As always, the Emperor appears as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face. Just a heads up, if you don't want to be seen as a god, don't walk around as a giant dressed in gold, performing miracles and laying waste to entire civilizations. Humans aren't the sharpest knives in the drawer, we tend to let our imaginations run away with us. Like I said from the beginning, the Emperor of Man is nothing if not single-minded, arrogant, and unshakable in his vision. He decided upon this path long ago. We have scant few perpetuals to corroborate anything of the ancient times, but they seem to have no major stake in lying. So although their accounts are scant, we can probably trust them. The only question is if they even remember things accurately over 30 or 40,000 years. What we've
Not the Messiah, he's the Messiah. Yeah, people have basically decided this on his behalf. Alright, I'm pretty sure I'm fucked here. I don't know how you build this. What did I do? Oh. Got it. Sorry, chat.
been told is that upon the ancient Earth, the Emperor was not as powerful as he would become, although it was also told that he was always stronger than the others, than the other perpetuals, the other early psychers of humanity, if you will. And this is fairly important, because slightly more powerful is quite a step from erasing the memories of legions of Astartes, and physically being a guiding beacon for all humanity across the galaxy, and all of the other insane things the Emperor can achieve by the period of M30. Now, we might well consider, okay, this is a very long time, and just as we see other psychers emerging in human history over this time, perhaps the Emperor simply became more and more powerful. However, several things stick in my mind. Firstly, that doesn't seem to have happened with other perpetuals, and also Horus states that the Emperor travelled to Moloch potentially several millennia previous, and that's just his guess. It could have been even earlier. We know that he travelled there with perpetuals, and I also presume this to have occurred prior to the Age of Strife, which occurred in M25. Now, Malcador himself has stated in the early years of M31 that he is 6,718 years old, placing his birth, or however he came into being, around M24, the millennia just prior to the Age of Strife. Additionally, I've always had a difficult time discarding how Malcador explains so clearly in First Lord where the woman he is consoling on her deathbed presumes his extended age is due to his close association with the Emperor.
I mean, Aeschylus, we've had this discussion before. The whole point of the brilliance of Warhammer is that it takes into account the psychology of the human mind. So as much as humans like to believe that they are like we've evolved beyond religion, the truth or the opposite is almost always glaringly obvious, right? Humans are not past religion. Humans just turn different things into religion. If it's not God, then we will turn politics into religion. Or we will turn fucking ideology into religion. But humans will at all times find some form of religion. You know, no matter, like, it doesn't really matter. They will find some way to be religious.
The Emperor's powers gifting Malcador life beyond that of a human, and Malcador laughs and says, no, you have it backwards. The Emperor was not the Emperor until he met me. So he's suggesting here that something significant occurred between the
Wait,
Emperor
what?
and Malkador early on in their
Wait, Malkador just said that you have it backwards. The Emperor was not the Emperor until he met me. Is Malkador saying that he's the one that turned the Emperor into a god?
companionship. Now, who knows when that is, but it's very plausible that this could have occurred within, let's say, the first 1,000 years of Malkador's lifetime, well within the scope for the Emperor to then travel to Moloch. Because let's just go back over this. How did the Emperor know he needed to travel to Moloch again? Did he just know off the top of his head that this place was there? Did he sense it? How did he acquire that knowledge? Now, possibly he would have had access to records through the time he lived through, but it's also possible that somebody told him of what lay there in the depths. The ancient discoveries of human civilization, post-Dark Age of technology. Say somebody who belonged to an order whose entire purpose was to remember critical information. Malkador says, for the longest time, he was only the greatest of warlords of old Earth. They knew him by a different name. Malkador talks of the Aquila's symbolism and how its blindness is not always representative of a lack of sight. In this, I believe he is alluding to things that they do not wish to see, or more importantly, do not wish to acknowledge. He states the Emperor does not dwell upon the past. His attention's always focused on his vision for mankind's destiny. He doesn't want to talk about the untoward things that they maybe did in order to get to here. I believe, in my current headspace, that Malkador provided the Emperor with the knowledge of Moloch so that the Emperor and other perpetuals would travel there with the express purpose of gaining whatever it is he brought away, which I believe to be probably both knowledge and power. Malkador and the Emperor then began planning their grand scheme to guide humanity into a new age within the webway, as the Emperor has been pretty clear about, and thereby enable us to become a truly all-powerful psychic race and sever our connection to the warp, which the Eldar failed to do. Sometimes the Emperor sounds a little bit more like headed in a Necron direction, but regardless, the big point is what happens with the heresy and the Astartes, and this is really where things become difficult. In one respect, it's reasonable for us to perhaps assume, okay, perhaps instead of one almighty extermination event similar to the Thunder Warriors, the Astartes engage in a more staggered destruction. The Emperor would not have the forces to destroy the combined power of the Astartes, or I presume so anyway. So perhaps alternatively to a large slaughter, some would have had some use in the interim, like Magnus, Dawn, Guilliman, whereas the more unstable, unreliable Primarchs would be twisted into darkness, ultimately destroyed. Except this doesn't work, because Guilliman has had several attempts at killing Mortarion, Fulgrim, and has been readily slapped down to the ground every single time. In fact, one of the few things that saved him was a form of religious intervention on behalf of the Sororitas. So this concept of the Astartes just fighting to the death and basically extinguishing each other, sort of as Malkador states or alludes to, I feel like there is something in there, but the precise details are kind of unknowable. Also, something that never comes up with the Emperor's grand plans. What happens to all the Mechanicus? I have a feeling they're not going to be too thrilled at the concept of having to leave Mars, leave all their cogs, oils, incense and giant robot toys behind. So is the Emperor's plan to really have a huge civil war, and then after that have another civil war? It's hard to really put together in a reasonably logical way once you actually start to think about it. This is in fact perhaps why the Emperor's plan has never been fully revealed. Because the more you put the puzzle pieces together, you start to realise you're missing way too many pieces to make any kind of coherent picture. You've got maybe one corner that sort of looks like something, but the rest is just bits of possible things. Now, do I think that the remaining Astartes and Primarchs would have to eventually be destroyed? Yes, absolutely. It's clear repeatedly that no matter what he says at a surface level, the Emperor has got no care for his creations. They're just tools to complete a task and be discarded. He doesn't consider them human even, because later down the line, if humanity eventually became so psychically developed, what would then be the need for the throne and Magnus and the Primarchs and the Astartes? Also, of course, there would be no need for navigators, astropaths and so on. If we take Malkador at his word, which for the most part I feel you can, the heresy was planned to some degree, it was schemed to occur. But if that were true, it's also difficult to see how the Emperor's plan could have worked at all. Was his plan to usher most of humanity into the webway, then slam the door shut, put put up some kind of psychic bubble around the throne room and gateway, just let everything outside annihilate itself, which it probably wouldn't. Again, to a degree, that kind of seems like the Necron's plans. Go to sleep, let everybody destroy themselves via entropy and awaken to a lovely clean galaxy? In truth, the Emperor of Man seems something of a nightmarish being, but only in the sense that he exists in my mind as the ultimate distillation of a species. When people see through to the core of the Emperor, I always imagine they're seeing something like humanity in its most raw, terrifying form. Or another possibility is, of course, that yes, the Emperor, if we take any number of wildly speculative origin stories, most of those lean toward the Emperor being something not entirely human by any measure of definition. Really, this starts to get into more philosophical terminology because we start to think about things like, okay, what makes us human? How do you define this? Is a Psyker still human? Is a Custodes and Astartes? What is it that's different between a human and a not? Why does that matter? Why does the Emperor care so much about the difference of what makes a human and what doesn't? Why does he care about that? Is it just purely our eternal survival? The more you pull at this thread, the more it starts to become difficult to place just what it is he's so invested in. And that in itself is pretty troubling. And this is perhaps why you have figures like Ol P, John Grammaticus, who have taken this position that the Emperor should be stopped and that humanity should be allowed to take its own course. Of course, with Ol P, that wasn't really his opinion.
I don't know about these, so I sort of wanted to listen to hear if there was any sort of extra discussion about this, because I don't quite understand the Emperor, or one theory is that the Emperor wanted this kind of because he wanted his own sons to eventually defeat each other, right? So that was the plan, that his sons would take care of each other and eventually humanity would be left in peace because of the war between his sons. I don't know if that makes sense to me. I think there's far more. The Emperor is busy preparing an army, and that's why the heresy had to take place. So is so habitable for that reason, and yeah, it's either him or Lorga right now. Lawmasters, what is humanity? Metaphysics and time travel, deep theories. Authors, space soldiers, pew pew, aliens, explosions. I don't think it's that. I think the writers are the reason for the inspiration here, right? They provide the inspiration for this.
Opinion for the longest time and worth discussing another time. But in my mind, the Emperor is more of a tragic figure, so consumed by his own belief, his own purity of vision, his own hubris mostly, that he's unable to see clearly at all that he's very likely doing far more harm than good, even if his intentions are positive, pure, and he really believes he can achieve what seems impossible. A small tangent. In many ways, I see the Emperor not dissimilarly to Davros in Doctor Who Genesis of the Daleks, and I'm sorry to throw in such a wild tangent reference, but I really see a lot of similarity, and I'm not talking about Davros in the new shows, but just in this classic serial Genesis of the Daleks. Because Davros, like the Emperor, also seems to have this maniacal obsession to see his species survive. Not unlike the Emperor, he was looking only at the big picture. He saw the
planned for and planned for, but not what he wanted to happen. Like, his plan was something else, and this plan is his contingency for if it gets fucked up. It's a pretty bad fucking contingency, though. I mean, things aren't going fucking great right now. Right?
Perpetuation of his race via the Daleks, also partly himself.
A weakness that will make you give me the knowledge to change the future. You are afflicted with a conscience.
And the Daleks were to be the ultimate genetic evolutionary form, kind of like what the Emperor is looking toward. So to Davros, this becomes the only important thing at all.
I allowed this charade to be played out for one reason only. To find those men who were truly loyal to me, and to discover those who would betray me. I will go on exterminate! Exterminate!
The fuck is that?
He will sacrifice everything, even
Well,
all
that's
the
bad
souls
acting right
of his
there.
civilization in the current time, to see his ultimate form be perpetuated into the future. Because in his mind, all of the things in the current time no longer mattered. He was looking at the much bigger picture. Another thought is that the Emperor understood the impossibility of his task and was trying to just walk a line. I've often thought perhaps the reason his goals were not clear is because he was just trying to play the odds, knowing the unpredictable nature of humanity, and that maybe he thought, well, if this doesn't work, I've sown enough seeds in the minds of all that maybe things will go in a different direction that still will help to protect humanity. Say, for example, turning the entire galaxy into a hyper-religious state that spends all their efforts worshipping the Emperor, so much so that it becomes an immense power in its own right. If we think about the Emperor's goals in the most basic terms, his plan was to unite humanity and lead it to a newly evolved state, secure from the most dire threats. Except, if that were true, then why in the hell did he wait until after the golden age of humanity, as I said before, to get involved and sort things out? By all accounts, humanity was actually smashing it in the golden age, but instead he opted for, no, I'm going to let everything turn to absolute ruin and then start from scratch. As I said, something seriously doesn't add up here, and as many have suggested before, for the Emperor, it might have been a plan to just, save a few functional STCs somewhere, just store them away in a big underground safe in a mountain range, just in case, just on the off chance they're needed. Let's play it safe. This, of course though, is not the point. The Emperor is meant to be a flawed figure, just like the rest of humanity, and
I would say the reason the Emperor didn't do it during the golden age of humanity would be acceptance. Just generally speaking, if everything was going incredibly well, when, for example, do you find most people rotate and navigate towards religion? And this is not to badmouth religion or anything to that effect. It's just generally, when do most people move towards religion? At low points in life. At points where you lose your job, you lose your livelihood, you lose your child, your husband, your wife, you lose, something bad happens to you, and you find religion, because at that point you start to feel the incredible crushing nature of life, and it almost always helps then to reach for something larger. So it's entirely possible that during the golden age of humanity, if the Emperor did stand up and claim to be a god, humanity would have wholesale rejected him. Because why the fuck would we listen, right? He would have gotten his shit kicked in by humanity. They would have started a war against him. So it was almost inevitable that he had to wait for the moment that, I guess one could say, the moment that humanity was ready to accept him. And that would have been when life got really fucked. I hope to God that works.
so when he asserts that he is just a man, just a human, not a god, I believe he's actually being honest in how he sees himself. For the humans who look upon him and see this godlike being of immense power, they're only able to see what he appears to be, not what he truly is. The vision he projects is what in part enables him to marshal such respect and awe among humanity, and it's only for those who see through this to what lies beneath do they see the true face, and as John Grammaticus would say, a bloodthirsty bastard. The Emperor's plan, to my mind, however you want to approach it, could never have worked, for the simple reason of humanity. The Emperor had some early success, but even before they were setting out on the crusade, the Imperium was already failing. The hypocrisy was just far too clear to see before things even began. This is illustrated perfectly in Valdor Birth of the Imperium. Kandawire wants to put Valdor on trial for the slaughter of the Thunder Warriors because, despite what the Emperor had promised, that humans themselves would play a strong, actual part in the new Imperium, she quickly discovers that this is not the case. Kandawire remembers stories from her father about Earth as it was. This is what she's built herself around. And so she knows firsthand that humanity was ruled differently in the past, but she begins to see that the Emperor is no different than any of the other warlords and autocrats. In the end, she is vanquished, for no other reason than attempting to fulfill her role as the head of Terra's Arbites. Instead, she's told to ignore the outright massacre of the Thunder Warriors and is exiled to live in a small desert camp home, spared execution by the grossly hypocritical Imperial Custodes who sanction her for attempting to carry out the job they assigned her in the first place. And the Imperium would only spiral downhill from here. But it was truly this undermining of the civilian government so early on that exposed and betrayed the truth of the Imperium, that it was purely to be the Emperor's autocracy. This may have been more palatable had he clearly laid out his plans to anybody at any time, but apparently no, this was too dangerous or unnecessary. The Emperor's plan failed not because of Horus or Erebus or any of the Primarchs, not because of humanity, not because of chaos. The Emperor failed because he placed himself at the center of everything, because he believed in his almighty hubris that only he could be the salvation of humanity, and he couldn't bear to share the burden, not even with his most close companions and allies, instead speaking forever in vague riddles and metaphors and stories and tales and all this other crap. His arrogance was his most human flaw, and ironically, the Eldar's flaw as well, both so highly advanced, both so certain of themselves that they were perhaps unable to even contemplate the possibility of failure, the possibility that perhaps it was they who were the main problem. In short, when you lay it all out, everything the Emperor did from start to finish was either one of the most deep, carefully laid, visionary plans conceived ever, so much so that because of such visionary levels of genius, even now we still cannot see how it was all meant to work. Or perhaps, far more likely, the Emperor had this vision of where he needed to get to, what he needed to achieve, and was thereafter, for the most part, winging it all the way, trying to paper over the cracks as they appeared and hoping somehow it was all going to work out. The final and far more disturbing plan is that this continues on as some kind of unseen master plan that involves him dragging humanity into the state of miserable decay as it has been for some 10,000 years, meanwhile the Emperor has not come close to completing his goals still, and that this remains just another piece in his grandiose galactic puzzle. Primarch Guilliman has not shared his insight with the Emperor for us. That would have been nice. Beyond